A service of KIBMradio.com, the Internet's home for an all old-time radio.
Jerry of the Circus. For Jerry of the Circus.
Hey, Bumps, where's Rags?
Around here someplace, I guess. We just finished our final walk-around.
That's funny. It's not like him to go running off.
Oh, don't you worry. He'll be back. You can't lose him.
Gee, it's a nice day, isn't it? I just love this backyard on days like this. The show going on just as regular, and the music, and all the costumes.
Well, now, Jerry, you're getting sentimental.
Guess I feel kind of sad.
You do? Why?
I've been over talking to Kelly.
Well, I don't know a jollier man on the lot than Kelly. He's the best cheerer-upper I know. Say, that Irish menagerie man's got more animal stories than anyone else in the business.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, come on, Jerry, snap out of it. We're getting paid now, you know.
Yeah.
Well, say, Kelly must have been telling you a whopper to get you down like this.
No, he wasn't telling any stories.
Well, then whatever's wrong.
Did he hear about the new?
New what?
New. GNU.
Oh, you're talking about an animal.
Yeah. The one that died.
Oh.
Yeah, one of them died in Fordham.
It seems like an awful lot happened in Fordham.
I'll say.
Oh, now, Jerry, there's no reason for you to feel so upset.
But they're pretty animals, so gentle.
Well, I knew about it when it happened, but you were so all-fired busy, I guess I never thought of mentioning it.
Mr. Randall must feel pretty bad.
Of course he does. But after all, when you're around so many animals all the time, things are bound to happen over a long period of time.
Oh, I don't feel so bad about the one that died.
Well, I thought you said that... Say, what on earth is going on behind that funny little freckled face of yours, Jerry?
Well, you see, it's like this. Kelly says the other new, her name's Maud, is going to die, too.
What?
Yeah. You see, she's left all alone, and she's grieving something fierce. Kelly says that happens now and then. Animals just die when they lose another animal they like a lot.
Yeah, I know that's true. Oh, well, that's really a shame, Jerry.
Yes, that's why I'm feeling so sort of blue, and yet it's such a swell day, and it's so good to be here.
Well, we'd better get going, Jerry.
Guess I'll just sit here and wait for Ag.
Oh, no, you don't. He's probably over at the wagon now. Come on, Jerry. Now, you can't help that new by worrying about it.
Yeah, I know, but I sure wish there was something I could do.
Say, there was a good house today. I never saw so many kids.
Yeah, they sure liked your act.
I didn't have any trouble hearing them applaud you and El Mundo.
Oh, he was going great today. He sure was in a good mood. Did you hear him squeal after he picked me up and put me on his head?
Oh, I sure did. Looked like you most lost your balance for a minute.
I almost did. I was so surprised. He never squealed like that before. Scared me for a minute.
Oh, just high spirits, Jerry, that was all.
It's funny how much I'm getting to like that elephant. I never was scared of him, but now I can just hardly wait to work with him.
Well, that's the test of a real animal performer.
How do you mean?
Well, an animal and his master have to like each other to do their best. And if you really love your animal, you can make him do lots more.
And I suppose that's so. Oh, well, here we are.
All right. Well, hello there.
Float your pay envelopes around.
Oh, say thanks.
You sign here. Here's an indelible pencil.
Well, that's service. Thank you.
That's okay. Too many folks in the Midway. Mr. Randall thought it better to have me deliver the envelopes.
Here you are. You can read my writing.
Sure. Well, so long.
So long. Funny Rags wasn't here. I feel kind of mean opening this pay without him being here.
Oh, well, it's yours, too. Yeah, it's good to have this makeup off.
I wonder where Rags is. Guess I'll take a look around.
No, wait a second. I'll walk away with you. I want to see Mr. Randall a minute.
Sure. Here, I'll hang up this stuff.
All right. Now, where's my belt?
Oh, there under the chair.
Oh.
I'm going to buy something special for Rags this week.
Oh, good. All right, let's go. Well, what are you going to get him?
Oh, I don't know. I'll think of something.
You know, I think it's pretty nice the way you always buy Rags a present every week.
Well, money doesn't mean anything to him, and I guess he earns some kind of a bonus.
He sure does. Yeah, but most folks wouldn't think of that.
Bumps,
Huh? Now what?
look over there.
Where?
Coming from behind that bandwagon.
Huh? Well, I'll be...
It's Rags.
It sure is, but what's he got in his mouth?
Rags, come here, you mite. What you got? Jumping horse feathers. It's a cat.
Cat? Hey, Rags, put that down. Why, you'll hurt that.
Here, Rags. Put that cat down.
Oh, look, right at your feet.
Well, of all things. Poor little kitten. He look, Bumps, he's been hurt.
You think Rags did it?
Look at him, so proud of himself. No, if Rags had done it, he'd have his tail down.
Well, he must have found this cat, and it couldn't move.
So he brought it to us. Can you beat it?
You dogs are funny, aren't they?
Nice, Rags. Sure, that was nice of you. Thought this cat needed some attention, huh? Oh, poor little thing. It looks half-starved. I'm going to get it something to eat.
You better get it to the doctor first.
Yeah, I guess I had. He was over to them in an adjury tent a while back, trying to make that poor new eat.
You know, it's tragic how animals will starve themselves to death on purpose.
I don't care, Mr. Randall. You can say what you like. Belko says those things on purpose to humiliate me, and I won't stand for it. I just won't.
Sounds like the Major's on a rampage again.
Oh, poor Major Mite. Being a midget certainly makes him sensitive.
He's a bully. That's what he is, a bully.
No, Major. Don't take it out like that. I'm sure Belko's just
Thoughtless. I appeal to you. Just a minute, Jerry Bumps. I want you to hear this. What did you say if a big bully called you a dummy? Yes, sir, a dummy.
You don't mean to say Belko said you were dumb.
Well, not exactly that. But he said I'd make a good dummy, you know, for a ventriloquist. I guess that's insulting enough.
Oh, he was probably just kidding you, trying to be funny.
Kid nothing. He was trying to humiliate me, and I won't stand for it. I won't. He thinks he's so smart.
You know, some people just like to brag. That's probably what he was doing.
Why, do you know what he said? He said that beef eater said that I was just a sample. A sample. Do you get that?
Sample of what?
Sample of a man. Bah, you think I'm going to stand around and take that kind of talk from a human crane? Thinks he's wonderful because he can lift heavy weights.
Well, now, just calm down, Major. I'll talk to Belko and see that he's a little more careful of what he says.
And that's not all. You ought to hear the lies he tells.
Lies?
Sure, a lot of nonsense about being able to drag a truck with his teeth and swing a trunk around his head with his teeth.
Well, can he?
Of course not. He's just talking, showing off in front of all these towners. Offered to play basketball with me if somebody get him a basket.
Well, now, that's really going too far.
I'll say it is. Why, I was just speechless. That's what I was. Imagine throwing me through a basket. I never heard of such nerve.
Well, now, don't you worry any more, Major. I'll see to Belko. But you go on tonight and no nonsense. Now, you hear me?
All right. But I'm warning you, I'll not stand to be belittled by a man made out of just muscle and bone.
Well, all right.
I guess I'd proved before that brains are more important than brawn.
Yes, all right, Major. I'll see Belko. Goodbye.
I guess I know when I'm right. Well, goodbye, folks.
Oh, goodbye, Major.
Boy, Major can sure work himself up into a stew, can't he?
Yes, he certainly can. He gets into a perfect lather, but as soon as he flies off the handle and gets it over with, he feels better. Well, Jerry, what have you got there?
Rags just brought him.
Huh.
Isn't he cute?
Well, poor cat. Well, it looks half-starved. Oh, it seems as if it's hurt in some way.
Yeah. When Rags brought it in, it just lay there on the ground. Didn't get up on its feet or anything.
Well, you better get it some food, Jerry.
Thanks, Mr. Randall, I will. Thought maybe I'd better let the doctor see it.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Jerry. We can't take it with us, but we will do what we can for it.
You're swell, Mr. Randall, but... Well, couldn't we just... Well, it wouldn't be in the way or anything.
No, I'm sorry, Jerry, but that's quite out of the question. Say, Bumps, I've been wondering...
Mm-hmm. What about?
Well, do you suppose Belko can do all the things that he claims he can?
Well, no, I couldn't say offhand, but there have been men with phenomenal teeth who did unusual stunts.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking that...
Say, that's a good idea. Imagine really doing those stunts in the sideshow. Boy, that ought to pack 'em in.
Well, I wasn't thinking of the sideshow, Jerry.
You mean...
Yeah, if he really is good, it might be worth featuring him under the main top.
Say, boy, that'd sure burn up the major.
Oh, no. All he wants is to be the main attraction in his own tent. He doesn't care what happens under the big top.
But he certainly raises a rumpus if anyone steals his thunder in the sideshow.
I'll say he does. Hey, what you going to do, Mr. Randall?
Well, I'm not sure, Jerry, but you might do an errand for me.
Sure, anything you say.
Well, run along and take care of your cat first. And then look up Belko and send him to me in the office wagon. I'm headed for there now.
Sure, I will.
Oh, Sam, I meant to ask you if I could get Lester over in the workshop to rig me up some kind of a fake bull headgear for Rags.
Yeah, Judge, if you think you can manage it, Bumps.
Oh, I'm sure he can. I know what has to be done.
All right. Go ahead and tell Lester you've got my okay.
All right.
Well, I've got work to do. I'll be seeing you. I'm sorry about the cat, Jerry, but I guess you've got your hands full enough with Rags.
Goodbye, Sam.
Well, bye, Mr. Randall. Coming, Bumps?
Well, I guess I may as well. Got nothing special to do.
Bumps, I'm awful disappointed. You don't know how I hate to leave this poor little kitten behind.
Well, maybe it'll be best in the long run, Jerry. Never can tell. If it's hurt bad, the traveling mightn't be good for it.
Well, here's a menagerie tent. Hope the doctor's still here. Mind holding the flat back? I kind of got my hands full.
All right. Sure thing. There you are. Come on, Rags. Come on, boy. After all, this is your patient.
Hi there, Kelly.
Oh, hello, Jerry. You back again?
Yeah? The doctor around?
No, not now, but I expect him back any minute.
Good. We'll wait here then.
Well, hello, Bumps. How's Trick?
Oh, fine.
Say, what you got there, Jerry?
It's hurt, poor little thing. Thought maybe the doc could help.
Sure thing.
How's your patient?
Well, I don't know. I can't seem to interest Maud in anything. And it's breaking me heart.
Oh, poor Maud. Look at her just laying in there. Say, she's looking at us.
No. You're right, Jerry. Say, that's more interest than she showed all day. Oh, there she is turning away again. Yeah, that's the trouble. Sure, if we could just keep her interested enough
So she'd want to keep on living, huh?
Yeah, the rest would be easy. Because there's not a thing in the world wrong except she's graving her heart out.
Say, Kelly, hey, look, she's watching us again. Say, you don't think it's this cat, do you?
No, what she'd want would... Say, wait a minute. Here, give me that kitten.
Careful now, don't hurt it.
I won't. I just want to see it.
Hey, Kelly, I believe you've hit on something. Hey, look. Maud's watching you.
Kelly, she is.
Yeah, I guess she thinks the cat's more miserable than she is.
But look, she's getting up. She's moving over.
Oh, Kelly, wouldn't it be wonderful if... No, wait a minute, folks. Here comes the doctor. Maybe he'll know what to do.
The psalmist said, "When I awake, I am still with thee." For the child of God, seeking the presence of the Lord is essential as each day begins. To help you in starting this day with God, we offer a brief devotional meditation from morning and evening, a collection from the pen of one of the greatest preachers of all time, Charles Haddon Spurgeon. Our text for this morning is found in Psalm 52 and verse 8. The mercy of God. Meditate a little on this mercy of the Lord. It is tender mercy. With gentle, loving touch, He heals the broken in heart and binds up their wounds. He is as gracious in the manner of His mercy as in the matter of it. It is great mercy. There is nothing little in God. His mercy is like Himself. It is infinite. You cannot measure it. His mercy is so great that it forgives great sins to great sinners after great length of time, and then gives great favors and great privileges, and raises us up to great enjoyments in the great heaven of the great God. It is undeserved mercy, as indeed all true mercy must be, for deserved mercy is only a misnomer for justice. There was no right on the sinner's part to the kind consideration of the Most High. Had the rebel been doomed at once to eternal fire, he would have richly merited the doom. And if delivered from wrath, sovereign love alone has found a cause, for there was none in the sinner himself. It is rich mercy. Some things are great, but have little efficacy in them. But this mercy is a cordial to your drooping spirits, a golden ointment to your bleeding wounds, a heavenly bandage to your broken bones, a royal chariot for your weary feet, a bosom of love for your trembling heart. It is manifold mercy. As Bunyan says, all the flowers in God's garden are double. There is no single mercy. You may think you have but one mercy, but you shall find it to be a whole cluster of mercies. It is abounding mercy. Millions have received it, yet far from its being exhausted, it is as fresh, as full, and as free as ever. It is unfailing mercy. It will never leave you. If mercy be your friend, mercy will keep you in temptation to keep you from yielding. With you in trouble, to prevent you from sinking. With you living, to be the light and life of your countenance, and with you dying, to be the joy of your soul when earthly comfort is ebbing fast. This meditation was taken from Morning and Evening by C.H. Spurgeon. Please listen each morning at this same time for Morning and Evening.
The greatest story ever told. Today we present The Widows Mite, a drama based on an event set down in the 22nd chapter of the Gospel according to St. Luke, an event from the greatest life ever lived. This day, the people of Jezreel go about their usual duties. But in addition to the cares of the day, each one is concerned in good and neighborly fashion about one other problem. The women who meet at the well to draw water talk of nothing else. And the men in the marketplace mention it in those moments when trade is quiet. A few words pass between them, looks of concern cross their faces, and then are followed by the inevitable and regretful shaking of heads. It is just as he is shaking his head so sorrowfully that we come upon the old merchant Elisha and hear him say,
Too bad. You know, Joseph, it's only when such a thing happens that you realize how fragile and fleeting a thing this life really is.
Yes, Elisha. and to happen to such a fine man as Daniel. But that's all in the past. Now we must think about Abigail. Poor woman to be widowed so early in her life.
Sarah and I have already asked her to come and stay with us, at least for a while.
Well, what did she say?
She said she had no wish to impose on others who had barely enough to live on as it was. And, of course, that's true. Sarah and I have little, but in such an emergency, well, you share what you have.
And she wouldn't accept it?
No. I tell you, there's something about that woman one must admire.
Elisha, can admiration fill an empty stomach? Something must be done for the poor widow. As a matter of fact, I thought that you might be the one who could mention this to Zachariah.
You mean you want me to go to him and ask charity for her?
Of course not. But since Zachariah's wife died, his little son has been reared by servant women.
If Zachariah never chose to remarry, who else can bring up his child?
Yet you can hardly talk to Zachariah without hearing his complaints about the women to whom the child has been entrusted. He's been critical to every single one.
Oh, and so you think that Abigail might be a good woman to raise this child of Zachariah?
Why not? The child would be better off for being raised by such a fine woman, and Abigail would be able to support herself. So if you talk to Zachariah...
I don't know. He's a strange man sometimes. One never knows how he'll react to something like this. He might accuse me of meddling in his domestic affairs, and I shouldn't like to offend him. He's too rich, too powerful.
Still, Elisha, for Abigail's sake. And you do know him better than I do.
Well, for Abigail's sake, yes, I'll risk it. I'll talk to Zachariah before the day is out.
Good, Elisha. Good.
Well, Elisha, we have talked of the weather, of matters in the marketplace, of many things. But I have a feeling you haven't yet mentioned the thing that brought you here.
Well, Zachariah, frankly speaking, I haven't made it.
I knew it. I can judge a man in his mood very quickly. And from little things. For example, the way you twist your hands so anxiously.
Oh.
And the way you sit forward on the edge of your chair.
Yes.
Well, what is it?
Zachariah, I don't think I'm meddling in your personal affairs, but if you could do someone good turn and serve the interests of your young son at the same time, that you would be happy.
My son? What does he have to do with it?
Well, I know how to satisfy you in this way of this yourself. I've heard you speak of it often.
And why not? When you think of the great responsibility that will one day fall on his shoulders when he takes over my estate, you can realize how important it is. So servant women rear such a boy? Can they?
Well, Zachariah, it so happens that there might be one woman who could. She's a fine woman. In fact, no one in Jezreel has ever spoken unkindly of her or of her husband when he was alive, poor man.
Oh, a widow, hmm?
And very recently. She's alone now. No family of any sort.
I understand. Well, I shouldn't want to judge her without giving her a chance.
You mean you'll actually talk to her? You will at least give her the opportunity of meeting you?
Of course.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Wonderful indeed. I cannot thank you enough.
Now, mind you, I promise nothing except that I shall talk to her.
Even that is a great deal more than I'd hoped for.
So? Then you must think little of me indeed. Am I a man of no conscience that I would turn from a widow in need?
Oh, of course not. Your charity is well known in Jezreel. It was just that I thought that where your son was concerned, you might feel offended that I suggested it.
I shall talk to the woman at my home early this evening. That's all I can say for now.
Yes, Zachariah, she'll be there, I promise you.
The woman of whom Elisha spoke. Your name is Abigail?
Yes, sir.
Well, do come in here into the great hall.
Oh, this is a great house. And this room is the largest I have ever seen.
It is something to make one stop and look and wonder at, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Now then, if you'll be seated, anywhere that you'll be comfortable.
Thank you, sir.
Well, now, I understand that you'd like to find a place in this great household as a sort of guardian over my young son. Is that so?
Elisha said the child needed someone to care for him.
I see.
Well, then, are you qualified to take on the great responsibility which would be yours if I should entrust the child to you?
Sir, I do not mean any offense. But is it our right to determine whether I am qualified?
It couldn't belong to anyone else. I decide how my son shall be raised, and I determine who is to do it, too.
Please, sir, I understand that 4 different women have tried and failed in this important duty.
Are you impugning my judgment in selecting those women? If you are, you are certainly lacking in tact. The person who comes seeking favor should not insult the one from whom she expects the favor.
Sir, perhaps you misunderstand. All I meant to say was this. No one can care for the child unless she loves the child, and unless the child loves her. It's the child's decision to make first, then we can talk.
You mean you want to see the child first?
I believe it would be better that way.
This is most unusual. Never been done that way before in this household. But there can be no harm in it. One moment. Jonathan! Jonathan, come at once to the great hall. Your father is waiting here to see you. We shall see now.
Father, you called me?
Yes, my son. Well, woman, how do you like my son?
He seems a fine child. A fine-looking boy. Though he's rather shy.
Jonathan, don't stand at the door fidgeting. Come in, come in.
But, Father...
Jonathan, come here.
Please, Father.
You see what those women have done to him? Made him frightened as a young lamb. Now, Jonathan, stop whimpering and come here at once. He won't move. He won't take a step toward us.
Sir, would you allow me?
What are you going to do?
Jonathan, I should like very much to talk to you.
You would?
Yes. You know, I've often dreamed of having a son just like you, with the same soft eyes and strong face, with the same dark and shining hair.
You have?
Oh, yes. Come here, Jonathan.
Yes, woman.
There. Now I can really see how your eyes sparkle. Or is it tears? Surely you weren't going to cry, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Good. But there's nothing to cry about. I want to be your friend, if you want me to.
Oh, I do. Woman, may I touch your face?
Yes, Jonathan, if you wish.
It's nice. Soft. Well, once before. I can't remember. Once before there was a face like that.
Well, now, Jonathan, tell me, do you like this woman?
Oh, yes, very much, Father.
I see. All right, now, Jonathan, you may leave us.
Must I go?
Your father said you were to go.
Yes, sir. Woman, would you come to visit us again, would you?
I will see.
I hope you do. I really hope so. But I must go now. My father said so.
Now that I've seen him, sir, I think we shall get on well. I think I could take care of him, raise him to be the kind of son you want.
Do you? Well, we'll see. What would you teach him?
To be kind, gentle.
He's too gentle already.
Frightened is not the same as gentle, sir.
Really?
Strong men and brave men can be gentle, too. Your son is only frightened. I should teach him to have courage and be gentle at the same time.
I don't know that that's a virtue. What else?
I should teach him to be a good man, one respectful of the rights and feelings of others. I should teach him to be charitable. I should teach him to love God.
Very fine aims, no doubt. But this son of mine shall have responsibilities greater than most men. He shall have my fortune to take over. He must be brought up knowing that. He must be aware of it all his life.
Truly, sir, in such a house as this, would he be likely to forget that?
Tell me, how does it happen that you were left so poor?
My husband was a good man. Of what he had, he gave a great deal to those who were needy.
I see. Well, do not think that I'm not a charitable man. In fact, anyone can tell you that I give more to charity than any other man in this town. But your husband seems to have been an improvident man.
Don't say that, sir.
One mustn't avoid the truth, woman.
Had my husband given away everything, even the very bread we ate, I shouldn't have called it improvident or wasteful.
If he wasn't wasteful, you wouldn't be here now asking for work. And the very fact that you defend his improvidence quite settles my mind on this matter.
You mean you've decided against me?
I'm not one to put off a decision, nor am I reluctant to tell anyone what it is once it's made. I'm sorry, woman, you will not do. You have nothing you can teach my son that I would want him to learn. Improvidence and wastefulness are not virtues. Not in this house.
It's your decision to make, sir. Now, if I may...
No, don't go yet. I'd not want you to think me a hard man. I know your plight. I should be very happy if you would take this purse of silver. I know you need it.
Oh, no, sir.
Go on, take it. You don't have to have any false pride before me.
Sir, I would rather not take it.
You can't eat pride, you know.
Please, sir, may I go now?
All right. But before you do, tell me, those very nice but very impractical things you said you'd teach my son, where did they come from?
I heard them at the master's feet.
The master? Well, what could you expect? I just wanted to know. You may leave now, woman.
Thank you.
Jonathan, go on, eat. Staring off into space that way will accomplish nothing.
Yes, sir.
It is not enough to say yes, sir. Go on, eat.
Father, may I ask you something?
Oh, of course. How else will you learn? What is it you want to know? Something about what goes on in the marketplace? What your father does business all day long? Something like that?
No, sir.
Well, then.
Father, one day last week, there was a woman who came here to see us.
Oh.
And she never came back. Why, Father?
Jonathan, the fact that someone comes to visit us once doesn't mean that they must come back again. Whatever business we had with that woman is concluded. Done.
You mean we won't ever see her again?
There's no reason for us to see her again.
But she was a nice woman. I liked her. I think she liked me, too. And her face was so nice. I've thought about it very often.
You have?
Yes, sir. Father, tell me, was my mother like that?
Jonathan, no two people were exactly alike. You must realize that.
I think maybe my mother was like that woman.
You don't even know. You can't remember that far back. It's foolish to talk that way.
I have a feeling she must have been like that woman.
You will stop talking that way.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry I was cross with you, Jonathan. Now eat your meal.
Please, Father, may I be excused? I don't feel like eating.
Jonathan, come back here. Gone. That woman. She's bewitched him. He thinks of nothing else.
Well, Zachariah, I received word from you, so I came here to your place of business at once. What is it you wish?
You did this to me, Elisha. You with your ideas.
I did something to you? Please, Zachariah, no.
You did. You played on my sympathies and then brought me nothing but trouble.
Zachariah, please, I don't know what you're talking about. You sound as though I'd done you some harm, and I haven't.
Oh, but you have. You told me about her. You arranged that I see her, and I did.
Wait, Zachariah. Could you possibly mean Abigail?
Who else could I mean?
Abigail's done you no harm.
Oh, no?
Why, Abigail couldn't harm anyone.
Couldn't she, though? She has bewitched my son. That's what she's done.
But that's impossible.
It's as though she cast some kind of spell over him. He's thought about her ever since. He asked questions about her. I almost feel he's not my son any longer, but hers.
Why, everyone likes Abigail. She's a very fine woman, of good heart. It's not strange that your son should like her.
But to say that he would want his own mother to be like that, and he's only seen this woman once in his life. How could it happen?
Zachariah, when a person is good, really good, that goodness will shine forth in a way that other people can feel. Abigail is that kind of person. That's why your son liked her so much.
You think that's what it is? You're sure this woman has no tricks of magic?
Zachariah, the greatest magic is goodness. Too few people know that.
Elisha, I can tell you something now. Something that troubled me. I believe I'm jealous of that woman. Because I feel my son loves her more than he loves me.
Oh, no.
Yes. I can admit that now.
Surely you exaggerate, Zachariah.
No, it's true. I knew it. I just didn't want to admit it to myself. But I shall change that. I shall try to become the kind of man my son will like and admire.
Good, Zachariah.
Tell me, Elisha, this woman spoke of the master when she was at my house. What do you know of him?
That he teaches of goodness and mercy and forgiveness. Of eternal life, which one must earn by his deeds on this earth.
Who is he to promise anyone eternal life?
Zachariah, there are those of us who believe he is the Christ.
You believe that, Elisha?
I do. But why accept my judgment, Zachariah? Why not come and judge for yourself? See him. Hear him.
Where?
He comes to Jezreel to teach in the temple this very week. You could see him there. Everyone will be welcome.
Elisha, if I were to follow his way of goodness and charity, do you think that I might become such a person as my son would love?
Who can answer such a question, Zachariah?
I must find out. I thank you for your information, Elisha. You will see me there at the temple with my son. Hold tight into my hand, Jonathan.
Yes, Father.
Such a great crowd, we might be separated. I never expected there'd be so many people here at the temple. Well...
What is it, Father?
It's Elisha. Elisha, I told you I'd be here.
And with your son, too. How are you today, Jonathan?
Very well, sir.
Tell me, Elisha, didn't you say that the master teaches charity for the needy?
Oh, indeed he does.
Then I shall show him and everyone that I know what the word charity means. Here, look. I empty my purse into the poor box. See, Jonathan? We must be kind to those who are needy. Surely that should attest to my charity. That I'm not one to hold money more valuable than kindness. Now, come, son, we shall take our places and wait for the master to begin his teaching.
Zachariah, you'd best wait here now.
But why?
Peter has just stood up to call everyone to order.
Peter? Who is he?
One of the master's closest followers. There, he is the one who speaks now.
I understand the master.
Friends, may we have quiet? The master will soon begin his teaching.
Look, Father. There.
Toward the door, Jonathan? What is it? What has caught your eye?
There she is. The woman. That very nice woman who came to visit us that day.
Oh, yes, just coming in. Look, she's coming this way. I wonder... No, not toward the poor box. Will she have the audacity to pretend that she can give to the poor?
She has something in her hand, Father. And she is dropping it into the box.
Well, 2 small coins. As small as there are. Not at all like the great sum your father gave, is it, Jonathan? Jonathan, are you listening to me?
Oh, look. Look, Father, look. At him. The one who stands near the poor box.
Yes, Jonathan. Hadn't noticed him before. Elisha, tell me, who is he? He's a stranger, isn't he?
Not to me, Zachariah.
What do you mean?
He is the master.
The master? Then I shall talk to him.
Wait, Zachariah. See? He goes to take his place before the crowd to begin his teaching.
Father, he was watching. He saw what you put into the poor box and what that woman gave, too.
Yes, indeed. And, Jonathan, you can well be proud of what your father gave.
Please, Zachariah, he speaks now.
Verily I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast more in than all they which have cast into the treasury. All they did cast in of their abundance, but she of her want did cast in all that she had, even all her living.
How dare he speak that way?
Zachariah, no.
I did not come here to be insulted. I'm leaving. Come, Jonathan.
Father, why didn't we wait at the temple? Everyone else stayed there to listen to the Master teach. Why did we come home?
Because I decided we were to come home. What is more, Jonathan, you're to forget that we were ever there.
Yes, sir. But it's strange. In the morning, you told me we were going to hear the teaching. But then we left after the Master had said only one thing.
Jonathan, there are times when you talk too much. You ought to be quiet.
Father, why are you angry?
I am not angry.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, my son. Didn't mean to shout at you. I suppose I am angry.
Was it something I did?
No, Jonathan.
Was it because of what the Master said?
What makes you ask that?
Was it because the Master said that nice woman really gave more than you did?
Jonathan, look at me.
Yes, sir.
You understood what the Master said, didn't you?
I think so, Father. Didn't he mean that what you gave was very little of what you had, and what that woman gave was all that she had? And so she really gave up more to do her charity. Isn't that right, Father?
Yes, Jonathan. Yes.
Well, isn't it true? Didn't she give up more?
Yes, my son.
Well, Father, if the Master told the truth, why should you be angry with him? I don't understand that.
Perhaps, Jonathan, because there are some of us who don't want to know the truth, as I'm beginning to see now. My son, I've always thought that I could teach you. Now I find that there are things you can teach me, too. Jonathan, come over to me.
Yes, sir.
Up here, on my knee.
Yes, Father?
Jonathan, I'm going to tell you something about your father. Something that I hope you'll understand and forgive.
Yes, sir.
Your father has been a very vain man.
Vain? Does that mean you're bad?
It means that I thought I was better than I really am. That can't be bad. Elisha said to me, the greatest magic is goodness. And it was in search of that magic that I went to hear the Master. But what I found out was that I don't have that kind of goodness within me. Certainly not the same kind of goodness that widow has.
She is very nice, Father.
Then, Jonathan, I shouldn't be jealous of her goodness. I should try to follow it. I can tell you now it was jealousy that made me tell her she couldn't come into this household to take care of you. But I'm changing my mind.
Father, you mean she'll be here? She'll take care of me?
Yes, Jonathan.
Oh, thank you, Father. Thank you very much.
I shall see her and arrange this at once.
Come in. Oh, it's you, sir.
Yes, Abigail. I came here to your house because this time I am the one who seeks a favor.
I have nothing in which you might be interested. As you can see, this is a simple house and very poor.
What I seek is not something contained in a house, but within a person. It is something I'd want my son to have. I feel he can find it only in you.
You want me to take care of the child?
If what I said the last time hasn't offended you too much. After all, I did say harsh things about your husband, calling him improvident and wasteful. I believed it at the time. But only because I valued my wealth too highly. I'd give it all to have my son think of me as he does of you.
Then you must be what he wants to be.
Perhaps you will teach us both then. Would you come to my house? My son is waiting for you.
Yes, Zachariah, but on one condition. That he shall be raised as one who has responsibilities to God and his fellow men. Not merely for the great fortunes and estates he may inherit from you.
A few days ago, I couldn't have agreed to that. But now, having seen the master and heard him, having found out what a vain man I really am, I say you may raise the child as you see fit.
Then I'm ready to go with you, Zachariah.
Shall we gather up your things?
I have little to take with me that is not in my heart. I'm ready now.
Next week, on this same network at this time, we will present another episode in the greatest story ever told from the greatest life ever lived.
The Big Strong Man and St. Roch.
Shifted down here, Leo. There's a sharp curve ahead, then a dip in the road.
You know, Joe, I'm not exactly weak, but this job is the hardest thing I've ever had to shift.
I know. As soon as this tomato season's over, we're going to have a new clutch and transmission put in it.
Yeah, it needs a brake job, too.
I know. Better shift it down again. Let the motor help brake it. You think you're going to like working for Hauser Trucking Company?
Yeah, I know I like it. Hauser's a fine fella.
He's that all right. He not only pays the union rate, he gives the boys a bonus at Christmas.
The only thing I really like, Joe's living here in Gradyville. I got tired of the city. We all did. Wife and the kids, they're crazy about it here. It's a grand little town.
Yeah, I guess I take it too much for granted.
Half the kids in our neighborhood in the city were delinquents. I want my kids to be brought up in a place like this.
They'll have to meet my kids.
How many kids you have, Joe?
2 boys, 2 girls. Watch this railroad crossing.
Is it used much?
Only during the crop season.
My name is Henry Hauser. I live here in Gradyville. It's a prosperous town, and I have a prosperous business in it. A couple of years ago, I had a reason for wanting to retire. So I called Joe Braden into my office.
Morning, Henry.
Good morning, Joe. Sit down.
Yeah, you look serious.
Joe, I want to retire.
At your age?
I want to settle my wife down in California.
Isn't she well, Henry?
Well, she's no better and no worse than she's been in years, but I want to give her a change. She deserves it.
She's a marvelous woman, Henry.
Now, look, Joe, you know how to run this business. Would you like to own it? Would you like to buy it?
Do I want to buy it?
Sure, why not?
Why, you know I can't afford it.
Now, Joe, I could sell it to Gordon Davy in 5 minutes.
I know you could. Why don't you?
Well, I like Gordon, but I like you more. You have a fine family, fine wife, 4 fine children.
But Henry, I just can't afford to buy it.
Look, now, I could fix it up with Mr. Lansing at the bank. We could work out something,
Henry,
Joe.
I appreciate this no end.
You're a hard-working man. Why not work for yourself?
Well, I always liked the theory.
Well, here's your chance to put it in practice.
I'll think it over, Henry. I got to get going now. I'm showing the new man, Leo Boyle, the Feltonville country today. We have 2 loads of tomatoes to pick up there.
What do you think of Boyle?
I like him. Good worker, good man.
What about that truck he's driving?
When the season's over, it'll need a big overhaul job.
Well, now, if it isn't in good enough shape, have the job done now. We can lease a truck from Gordon Davy.
Oh, it'll hold up for 2-3 more weeks. I have a piece of news for you, Leo. Henry Hauser is thinking of retiring.
Oh, good. He's thinking of giving up the business?
He's thinking of selling it.
Why does he want to retire? He's in the prime of life.
He wants to take his wife to California. She's been an invalid for years. Polio. She gets around on braces and crutches.
Well, that's too bad. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Henry wants to treat her to the California scenery.
Have any children?
She lost their first child, and she got polio. Henry wants me to buy his business.
Say, that would be something, huh? You gonna do it?
He wants me to talk it over with my wife.
You swing it financially?
Henry says he can help me fix it up at the bank. But I don't know. I'm not sure I have enough nerve for it.
Well, you ought to think it over, Joe.
Would you do it if you had the chance?
Oh, I'll say I would.
What? Oh, here's that curve and the grade down to the railroad spur.
Oh, these brakes are in pretty bad shape.
Go down another gear.
Joe, the brakes are dead.
What? There's the fruit tank. Give it the handbrake.
Joe! Joe, this load's so heavy the truck won't stop.
Throw it in the reverse. Strip the gears. Anything.
Leo Boyle was killed in that crash, and Joe Braden lost an eye, leg, and he suffered internal injuries, but he lived. I was talking about him one evening with my wife.
Henry, what do the doctors say about him?
Well, they say he'll be all right in time. He'll be missing an eye and a leg, of course, poor fella, but the internal injuries are coming around, so they think. And when he gets some of his old strength back, they'll be able to fit him with an artificial limb and train him how to move around on it.
Henry?
Yeah?
How will Mrs. Boyle and those 3 children make out financially?
She'll be able to keep going for 2 or 3 years.
And after that?
What she'll still be drawing then, she'll have to supplement by going to work. And the older boy will be able to go to work then, too.
Will she be able to get work in town here?
She's thinking of moving back to the city.
What about Joe Braden?
Counting up his disability compensation and an accident policy he had, plus the fact that I plan to pay him his salary for a year, he'll make out for the time being.
And after that?
Well, then he'll have to learn a mechanical skill, something he can perform at a bench. And when he does that, Frank Atwater says he'll take him on at his factory.
Henry?
Yes, dear.
Are you still thinking of selling the business?
Oh, definitely. Gordon Davy made me another offer for it today.
Henry, don't sell it.
Don't sell it.
Why not hold on to it for a while?
I want to take you to California.
I wouldn't feel happy about it, dear.
Why not?
Leaving Mrs. Boyle here and those 3 children, and Joe Braden and Kay Braden and their 4 dear little boys and girls.
Marion, I've done everything for those 2 families I've been able to.
I know you have, darling, but can't we wait a while? I think I'll give Kay a call. Could you reach me the phone, darling?
Yeah, here you are.
Thank you, dear.
Hello?
Gay, dear, this is Marion Hauser.
Oh, good evening, Mrs. Hauser.
I
Just wanted you to know that Henry and I have been thinking about you and talking about you.
How sweet you are. And Mr. Hauser's been like a father to us all.
How's Joe doing?
Well, I'm afraid it's all going to take time, Mrs. Hauser.
Pray to St. Roch.
St. Roch?
The patron saint of invalids. Sometime after I came down with my illness, someone told me about him. So I prayed to him. I know he helped me. I'll send you a little pamphlet about him.
Oh, I'll be glad to read it, Mrs. Hauser. And I will pray to St. Roch. Will you pray to him for Joe, too?
I most certainly will. And you tell Joe to pray to him, too.
Joe isn't himself, Mrs. Hauser. He just lies there in bed. When I talk to him, I don't know whether he's been listening to me or not, and he doesn't say a word.
Still in a sort of shock, I suppose.
No, the doctor says he's over that. It's just that he has no life in him yet. No heart.
I was like that, too, for a while. He'll get over it. It's harder on you in some ways than it is on him.
He was so big, so active, poor man. And not to have both legs and both eyes. I think he feels like only half a man.
He'll come through it, my dear. He's a fine man, Joe is. And he has a fine wife. And he has a fine friend in heaven.
You mean St. Roch?
He has our Lord, first of all.
Of course. And Our Lady.
And all the saints. But in his particular case, St. Roch.
The children and I will pray to St. Roch every day. And you will send me that pamphlet, won't you?
I'll ask Henry to leave it with you tomorrow. Good night, Katie.
Good night. And thank you so much for calling. But Joe, did I hear you say something? Were you calling me, Joe?
No, I wasn't.
I wish you'd talk with me, Joe.
What's there to talk about?
The children.
How are they doing?
Just fine. Won't you let them come in to see you?
No, thanks.
I'm going to let you in on a secret. When you're asleep, they tiptoe in and kiss the pillow. So why don't you let them see you when you're awake?
See me with one eye and one leg?
Well, you have a patch on your eye, Joe, and your body's covered up to your chest with a sheet. They love their daddy. They want to see him.
I don't want to see anybody. I wish I had lost both my eyes. Wish I had died with Leo Boyle.
I know how you feel, Joe.
How could you?
I'm your wife. I just know, that's all.
Who was on the phone?
Mrs. Hauser. She says we should all pray to St. Roch.
Oh, him.
Do you know about him?
Yeah, I heard the chaplain in the hospital talk about him during the war. He has something to do with invalids.
I'm going to pray to him for you. Why don't you pray to him, Joe?
He can't give me back what I've lost.
He can help you in other ways, though.
How? How can he help me in other ways?
Well, he can help you recover your spirits.
I have no spirits.
Are you getting sleepy, Joe?
Yes, I am.
Go to sleep, then. If you wake up during the night and need me, call me. I'll be right here with you.
Well, how can you sleep on that cot?
It's very comfortable. Can I get you anything before I put the children to bed?
No, thanks.
All right. Good night, darling.
Good night.
That was a Monday evening. And Kay had more or less the same kind of unhappy conversation with Joe on Tuesday evening. And again on Wednesday. And then on Thursday.
Darling, is there anything I could read to you? A mystery story? Western? The sports page? Politics?
I get politics and sports on the radio.
Well, I'm glad you're at least listening to the radio. Say, how would you like to have the television set up here?
If I had it here, the kids wouldn't be able to see it.
Oh, it was nice of you to let them come in and say hello to you this afternoon.
After they left, I felt awful. What will I ever be able to do for them?
Joe, look at some of your buddies during the war. Some of them handicapped much worse than you are. And they're making out fine.
And others not doing anything at all. Permanent invalids.
Joe, pray to St. Roch. He'll help you.
Who was he, anyhow?
He was a Frenchman. When he was 20 years old, he gave all his fortune to the poor. He tended the sick during a terrible plague in Italy during the 14th century. Italians call him San Rocco. There's a beautiful church in his honor in Venice. He's a patron saint of people who are invalids and people who suffer from plagues. Pray to him, Joe.
You pray to him. I can't. I'm useless.
That night, after Kay had gone to sleep on the cot, Joe was half asleep. He thought he saw and heard something. Was it a dream? Was it his memory? What was it?
Joe, the brakes are dead. There's the fruit train. Give us the handbrake. Joe! Load is so heavy, the truck won't stop. Throw it into reverse, strip the gears, anything.
Kay. Joe, what is it?
Kay,
Tell me, Joe. Tell me.
Kay?
Hmm?
I killed Leo Boyle.
Joe, darling, you were dreaming.
I knew the brakes on that truck were no good. Henry Hauser told me to lease a truck if I thought we had to. But I told him that big truck was good for 2 or 3 more weeks. I knew that those brakes were going, but I postponed. I delayed. It's what I always do. I delay.
Oh, Joe, you never delay. You've always been a conscientious, hard-working man.
But I postpone important things. I don't always face up to them. If I'd faced up to those brakes, Leo Boyle would still be alive.
Oh, Joe, dear. You're upset by a bad dream. Look, I've memorized the collect from the Mass of St. Roch. It goes like this. I'll say it slowly, and you say it in your mind along with me. O Lord, let thy continued loving kindness watch over thy people, and with the merits of blessed St. Roch to plead for them, keep them safe from all infection of body and soul. Through our Lord Jesus Christ, thy Son, who is God, living and reigning with thee, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, forever and ever. Amen.
Henry?
Yes, Mary?
I did something today.
No. What'd you do?
You know Mrs. Basting, the old lady who runs the dry goods and ocean store on Fremont Street?
No, I don't.
You wouldn't, I suppose. Well, I called a taxi, and I went to her store.
You went all by yourself?
The first time I've gone anywhere without you in years.
Whatever'd you do that for? To get a spool of thread, huh?
I asked Mrs. Basting if Mrs. Boyle could work for her. I knew that poor old lady had been wanting for a long time to take it easy, and she was delighted. Mrs. Boyle will go to work for her next week, and that means Mrs. Boyle and those lovely children can stay in Gradyville.
Marion, you're a saint.
I'm no saint, and I was certainly no saint for a year after I suffered that polio attack. And I'm afraid from what Kay Braden tells me, her Joe is going through something like what I went through.
What does she tell you?
Seems that Joe is so melancholy about his leg and his eye that it's affecting him physically.
I should have looked that truck over myself instead of taking Joe's word for it.
Henry, will you take me to see Joe tomorrow?
What? Why, of course. You haven't seen him yet, have you?
No, and I think I should. I'd like to talk with him. Joe, for a whole year after I had my polio, I was just like you.
What do you mean, Mrs. Hauser?
I was so melancholy, so blue.
I always had the idea you started smiling through it just as soon as you got it.
Oh, only extremely holy people do that, Joe. The rest of us take it hard at first, and, well, then we come around. God helps us to come around.
The way I feel, Mrs. Hauser, I'll never come around.
A big, strong man like you. Of course you will. I was a weak young woman, and look at me now. I gradually learned how to get around with these braces and crutches.
What could I ever do, Mrs. Hauser? All I ever did was to handle trucks.
Joe, what did you do when Henry and I went to Bermuda for 3 months? You handled Henry's business for him. You got contracts for him. You have intelligence, Joe. You weren't injured in your head, thank God. You still have that good brain of yours.
You sound just like my wife. She tells me all that, too.
Kay is right, Joe.
Kay's a fine woman, Mrs. Hauser, and so are you. But the two of you together couldn't begin to imagine how I'm feeling.
Kay, don't you give up praying to St. Roch.
Oh, I won't.
It was only after I started praying to him that I began to get patience, hope, some mental relief. That's why I'm so devoted to him. We must pray to St. Roch to give your Joe something to take his mind off himself.
You know, they used to be woodwork.
Really?
Uh-huh. He has all sorts of tools and things in the basement. He used to make furniture. He used to carve. He was very good at it.
Kay, that gives me an idea.
One day, Joe had to go to the hospital for a general checkup. I took him there, and Kay, of course, went along. The checkup revealed that physically Joe was improving. When we returned to the Braden house, Kay and I helped Joe upstairs. He still wasn't fitted for his artificial leg, but he was using crutches. He and Kay got to the door of his bedroom, and then...
What's been going on here? What's this all about? Will somebody tell me?
Well, it was Marion Hauser's idea, and so Henry arranged for Jack Ellerby, the carpenter, to do it while the three of us were at the hospital.
All my woodworking equipment in my bedroom.
Well, Joe, we were all afraid you were getting lazy. You showed no inclination to dash down to the basement to fool around with it, so we had it moved up here.
It seems that everybody wants me to fool around with something.
Oh, darling, after all these weeks of suffering and worrying, why not enjoy yourself?
Sure, Joe. Why don't you do something to amuse yourself?
By golly, I think I can sit on the edge of the bed and maybe... Why not? Why not?
That's the way to talk, old man. 2 weeks later, Kay Braden drove Joe for a visit to our house. Joe had 2 packages, one for Marion, the other for me. After we seated Joe comfortably in the living room, Kay did the honors for him.
Mrs. Hauser, this package is for you from Joe. And Mr. Hauser, this one is for you.
How lovely.
You don't know whether it's lovely or not. You haven't opened it yet.
Well, whatever it is, Joe, it's lovely of you to give me something.
Well, look at this. A handsome humidor, Joe. This is a beautiful piece of woodwork.
It's to a decent, generous boss, Henry.
And, oh, look at this. A statue a foot high. Look at the carving on it.
St. Roch, Mrs. Hauser.
Oh.
Kay went to the library and found pictures by Italian and French artists of St. Roch. I tried to get some sort of an idea from them for that piece of carving.
It isn't a piece of carving, Joe. It's a work of beauty.
It's a going-away present for you, Mrs. Hauser. Not that we like to see you go away.
Going away? Well, where am I going away?
Well, I understood from Henry that he wanted to take you to California.
Oh, we talked about that one time, but...
You wanted to stay on here in Gradyville to see how Mrs. Boyle and Joe Braden were going to make out. Well, I think you've taken pretty nice care of Mrs. Boyle, and you and St. Roch and Kay have taken pretty nice care of Joe Braden. Well, now Joe is going to take over the business. We had a long talk about it this afternoon.
Yeah. I'll never be able to drive a truck again, but I can sit at a desk I can run a business from there, can't I? You and Kay and St. Roch and Henry have made me feel... Well, I wish I could tell you.
I always did say you were a big, strong man, Joe.
That friend of yours, St. Roch, is bigger and stronger. So am I glad he is.
The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with the National Council of Catholic Men, presents the Catholic Hour. Today's program will consist of music by a unit of the Polish choristers and an address by Monsignor Fulton J. Sheen. Opening the Catholic Hour, we hear Barry's song of the Good Shepherd, O Bona Pastor.
Oh,
Monsignor Fulton J. Sheen of the Catholic University of America will now deliver the 10th in his series of 17 addresses on the crises in Christendom. His discourse today is entitled, How Overcome This Evil. I present Monsignor Sheen.
Friends, in this series up to this time, we have said that this war is not a conflict of nationalities, but of philosophies of life. The philosophies of life which are intrinsically evil are Nazism, fascism, communism, and a nationalism which identifies itself with deity. How overcome this evil? In order to answer that question, one must know the strength of the enemy. In all human forces, there are two factors, physical and psychological. The first determines the ability to fight. The second, the zeal with which one fights. From a purely physical point of view, our enemies are well armed, technically perfect. But their great strength lies in a psychological factor. They believe in an absolute. They have a dogma, a creed, a faith, and a religion. That pseudo-religion centers about a race, an emperor, a Caesar, or a corpse. But in its essence, they are all the same. The affirmation of another absolute than God. Call it fanaticism, call it diabolical. The fact of the matter is they are men of faith. The Nazis, for example, have faith in the primitive purity of their race, faith in the messianic call to be the masters of the world. And from that faith has come those unpentecostal fires which in the course of less than 10 years has swept them into the fury of the strongest army the world has ever seen. It is no answer to say that their faith is false. Certainly it is. It is like the faith of the demons in hell. But without a faith, nothing can be accomplished. It is the faith of the demons which inspires them to the ceaseless energy of the destruction of the kingdom of God, as it is the faith of the saints that inspires them unto its building. Whence has come this fanaticism for an absolute? It is the manifestation in a false form of a zeal which men should have had for the true faith. For the last 2 centuries, it has been the fault of the Western world to ridicule zeal for religion. Tolerance which should have been applied to persons was transferred to truth, so that men became indifferent to right and wrong and to truth and error. And zeal which men should have had for the true God could not long be kept chilled and frozen by indifference and by our so-called broad-mindedness, and it finally swept up through the surface and came out as fanaticism for false gods. The young people in these totalitarian countries were dissatisfied with the husks of our secularist culture. They wanted an absolute, one that would command conviction, a hearty wine of sacrifice. And they found it in a religion which was anti-religion. Their answer to a civilization that had forgotten the Christian religion was to be anti-Christian. They sought to erect a counter-church of the city of man, which would war against the city of God until the end of time. And that is why the world today is in the peculiar mood of having more energy for the spread of false gods of race and class and of power than it has for the spread of the knowledge of the true God and His life and His love. It is this faith of the enemies which explains the zest with which they fight. It explains why Japanese aviators believe that their death is the condition of their God's victory. And why young Nazi soldiers ask when they die that the inscription upon their tombstones reads, "He died in peace with Hitler." The human heart must have an absolute. As Voltaire has said, if man has no God, he will make a God for himself. Deny men the right to make a pilgrimage to the shrine of a saint, and in 50 years they will be making pilgrimages to a tank factory. Deny them a God incarnate, and in a few generations they will adore an emperor who is the incarnation of a God. The totalitarian powers have convinced us that man cannot live without a religion, or a faith, or an absolute. The question, therefore, no longer is, will we or will we not have an absolute? The only question is, which one will we serve? This very enthusiasm for false gods which they have is the explanation of their cruelty. There is nothing temporal that can bear the strain of being deified. It is like placing a marble bust on the stem of a rose. It distorts a man like beating a cripple with his own crutches. And thou a machine with infinite power, and it will kill you. And thou a finite human being with the power of God, and he will slay you. As Lord Acton said, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And as Chesterton said, speaking of the horrors of the new religion, God is more good to the gods that mocked him than men are good to the gods they made. When, therefore, a man with an eternal destiny is enlisted in the service of an earthly absolute, he becomes the fiercest and most fanatical soldier. And therein lies the total strength of our enemies. Their cause is a religion, the animal religion of a false god. And our problem is how overcome that absolute. This is one way we will not do it. Not by hate. There is a group in our midst who, feeling the lack of a crusading spirit and sensing the need of zest in battle, contend that the condition of victory is the hatred of enemies. Hatred is a poor alternative for faith. It inspires men to fight because their enemy is wicked, rather than because their cause is righteous. It looks to the poison of their arrows rather than to the justice of their archery. Lamenting the wickedness of our enemies will make us cruel, but it will never make us strong. I would rather think that our soldiers were inspired more by a love of the country they live in than by the country they hate. If we spend our time setting on the eggs of hate, in vain will we expect to hatch the dove of peace. And this absolute of theirs will not be overcome by force alone either. For no idea can be killed by force. A false idea can be overcome only by a true idea. A false dogma only by a true dogma. When Hitler says the power of money is dead, we must not counter with the defense of financial plutocracy, but rather with a new idea in which money shall be used exclusively as a medium of exchange. When Hitler says that the power of monopolistic capitalism is dead, we must not defend its abuses. We must counter with a new idea of economics based on the moral order. We cannot conquer Hitler's new order by attempting to preserve the old order from which it came. The one and only effective way is to build a new order ourselves, one grounded on the true absolute of God and the principles of justice and morality. And neither will we overcome this false absolute by an indifference to any absolute, or by saying that we are fighting merely to preserve the status quo. I know of a simple soul, one being asked the meaning of the word status quo, defined it rather correctly as the mess that we are in. We are not fighting to keep the world just as it was. If we were, we would be fighting to preserve a world that produced Nazism and communism and fascism. No vague sentiments about liberalism. No catchwords about freedom of the press. No American sportsmanship transplanted from the football field to a sea or a foxhole. No mass production, however great the 8-hour sacrifice of those who make it. No boasting and bragging. No complaining or haranguing of our public officials, and no change of legislators will carry us safely through this crisis unless we are prepared to give up our coat in time of fire and our cargo in case of a sinking ship. The Savior was right when he spoke of the crisis that faced Jerusalem. Go not back for your coat. Let it perish. The strength of our enemies is in their absolute. Our weakness is in the want of it. Their force is their ideology. Our weakness is the lack of it. They are sweeping ahead because they have dogmas, and we are falling behind because we have none. The dynamism of a false paganism cannot be overcome by the irreligion of democracy. The enthusiasm for false gods cannot be drowned by an indifference to the true God. No secularized, non-religious theory of political freedom is strong enough to overcome their faith. A people who lack the strength of an ultimate conviction cannot overcome their false dogmas. The effective answer to a false religion is not indifference to all religion. Unless there is a positive conviction to pit against the assault of the demon, the citadel of our soul will fall. What we need, above all things else, is the offensive of a great idea. Is there a place for it in American democracy? Certainly there is. Democracy is based on a political and an economic relative, but on a theological absolute. Does not our Declaration of Independence affirm that the Creator has endowed man with certain unalienable rights? In other words, God is the absolute in American democracy. And either democracy will rest on this divine foundation, or it will be laid to rest. Trying to preserve freedom and democracy without God, in whom alone these truths are grounded, is like preserving the false teeth of a drowning man. If we save the man, we will save his teeth. And if we save our souls in God, we will save our democracy and our freedom, but not otherwise. Now, Lent begins this coming Wednesday. Let it be a season for Catholics to prove by additional sacrifices their love of God and their love of country. May Catholics take a resolution to attend Mass every morning during Lent, receive our Divine Lord into their hearts in Holy Communion, and prolong the thanksgiving, if possible, into a holy hour. May the Jews and Protestants in like manner spend an hour in meditation and prayer for the same intention. And to all who wish little booklets to aid in this meditation and prayer, we will gladly send them to you free. But pray we must. For as Shakespeare said, if that the heavens do not quickly send down their visible spirits to tame these vile offenses. It will come that humanity must perforce prey on itself like monsters of the deep. Now this is the issue involved in the war, the choice of absolutes. No one has stated it among the United Nations quite as clearly as the Nazis have put it. In a book that was published in Berlin recently, entitled God and the Race, A Soldier's Creed, we read this statement of Nazi ideology. Each epoch has its symbols. Two epochs and two symbols are now facing each other, the cross and the sword. Today, Christianity is under the sign of the cross. Our struggle is not against man. It is against an idea. We struggle against the cross. That is Nazism. And that is one of the clearest expressions that has yet come from any nation in this world war. The Nazis say they are on the side of the sword. They put us on the side of the cross. So be it. And may a day come then, when Hitler reaches out his sword to us, that we, in virtue of our recovery of the absolute, will be strong enough to take that naked blade in our bare hands and pull it from him and lift the sword high in the air with the hills above and watch that hilt frame against the august blue of heaven's sky the glorious symbol of the cross of Christ and the pledge of American victory. O Lord Jesus Christ, who in thy mercy hearest the prayers of sinners, pour forth, we beseech thee, all grace and blessing upon our country and its citizens. We pray in particular for the President, for our Congress, for all our soldiers, for all who defend us in ships, whether on the seas or in the skies, for all who are suffering the hardships of war. We pray for all who are in peril or in danger. Bring us all after the troubles of this life into the haven of peace, and reunite us together forever, O dear Lord, in thy glorious heavenly kingdom.
The address you have just heard was entitled, How Overcome This Evil, and was delivered by Monsignor Fulton J. Sheen of the Catholic University of America. This was the 10th in Monsignor Sheen's series of 17 addresses on the crisis in Christendom. A copy of today's talk, as well as of the booklet referred to by Monsignor Sheen, The Shield of Faith, may be obtained by writing to the National Council of Catholic Men, Washington, D.C., or to the station to which you are now listening. The Catholic Hour closes with the traditional hymn, To Jesus' Heart All Burning. Next Sunday at this time, Monsignor Sheen will deliver another address in this series entitled Evil Has Its Hour. Your announcer is John Patrick Costello. This program has been presented by the National Broadcasting Company and the independent radio stations associated with the NBC network, in cooperation with the National Council of Catholic Men, and came to you from New York. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
When is a man a failure? When does he or anyone else have the right to say that he has sunk too far down to be saved? For an answer, we give you the true story of Camilo de Leylis, gambler, tramp, and, by grace of God, a saint. Camilo is one of the world's myriad children of misfortune. He is born in the Italy of the 1550s, a rough time and a rough country. His mother, poor woman, does her best to raise Camilo in the right way, but she is quite outmatched by the father, one of those gay, good-for-nothing gentlemen rogues who've been the heartbreak of their family since time began. By profession a soldier, he has the gift of throwing a cloak of high adventure over his shiftless gambling ways, and Camilo, of course, worships this father. The boy lives for the father's random, unannounced visits, and each time the mother sees her patient teachings blown away like thistledown. The boy grows up in the image of his father. It isn't long before the two of them, father and son, finish their job and break the mother's heart. She dies when Camilo is only 12. From a sense of duty, relatives take him in, they feed and clothe him, they give him no love. Nobody wants him. At 17, he runs away. He heads straight for an army camp, lies about his age, and joins the same regiment to be with his glorious father. And there it is, spread out before him, the life of his dreams at a time when the armies were filled with thieves and bandits, the bold, free life of a common soldier, and the voices of the camp are in his ears.
Camilo, come on, bring out the dice. Hey, Camilo, come on. Let's have a little game with the cavalry. They got paid today. Oh, this is a good town, Camilo. The wine is strong and the women are weak.
Camilo listens, and he learns fast. By the time he's 19, he knows everything. That is, everything bad there is to be learned. His father teaches him the ways to cheat with dice and cards. But neither he nor Camilo is very clever, and they're very bad losers. Everywhere they go, they become centers of trouble. Often they get half the regiment fighting. Finally, their commanding officer comes to the end of his patience. He has Camilo and his father march to the edge of the camp, and he puts it plainly. Go enlist with the enemy, which is the greatest favor you can do to us. Camilo and his father go swaggering off. One army pays as well as the next. They hear that an army is forming in Venice to fight the Turks, so they're off to Venice. But there happens to be a plague in the district they are passing through, and the father comes down with it. For a week fights a losing battle. Camilo watches, dazed and hopeless, beside his bed. For the first time, the boy has met an enemy who can't be run through with a dagger. His father makes his peace with God, then he dies. Poor Camilo. The world crashes around him. To get this wastrel father of his a last resting place, he has to beg a grave in a potter's field. He and the priest are the only ones who pray beside that grave. Camilo lingers there, a lanky, raw-boned youth, who realizes now the meaning of the word alone. Where can he go now? What's he to do? He keeps hearing his father's voice, the strange words of a dying man.
Camilo, don't go back to the army. Stay away from gambling in the camps. Don't throw your life away as I have. What have I ever done except hurt people? I killed your mother. I ruined you. God forgive me. 60 years and all wasted. Camilo, do something good with your life.
Poor Camilo. He does not know what to do. To make matters worse, he's developed an ugly running ulcer on the right leg. He couldn't go back to the army if he wanted to, and there's no use returning to his hometown. Nobody there wants him. But what to do? He hobbles a few steps down the road. Then he sees two men coming toward him, two Franciscan friars in robe and sandals. They swing by him with a smile and a God bless you. Camilo stares after them. He thinks wistfully of their ordered life. They seem to know what to do. They have peace and security. Suddenly an idea takes hold of him. He thinks of his father's plea for him to do something good with his life. He remembers that he has an uncle who is the superior of a Franciscan monastery not too far away. And then and there he makes a vow. He'll become a friar. He starts off for the monastery as fast as he can hobble.
No, Camilo, you're not ready to enter a monastery. You're still upset by your father's death. Now, the best thing for you to do is find an honest job and work at it, say, for a year. Keep away from gambling and get over your other bad habits. Then come back and we'll see. You don't become a friar by taking off a soldier's coat and putting on a robe. And besides, there's that leg of yours. No order could take you in until that is healed.
Camilo wanders off again. He has never worked in his life. As you might guess, he goes back to gambling. But luck, you'll remember, was never with him. Before long, he has nothing left to gamble with. Besides, an ulcerated leg gives off an odor. Nobody wants you around. He becomes desperate. He limps and hobbles his way to Rome. Someone tells him about the hospital of San Giacomo, where sick people with no money can work for their treatments. The hospital accepts Camilo and sends him to serve in the wards. These are packed with the sick and dying poor. The only attendants are patients like Camilo. They are rough and untrained. They hate their work. The place is called a hospital. It is an inferno. Camilo goes to work. In the wards, something happens to this hard-fisted trooper, this tavern brawler. When he touches the sick, his hands become soft, like those of a mother. The voice softens. He holds the dying in his big arms until they fall asleep like children. When someone asks him in some surprise how he can work so cheerfully in this house of horror, he says only, "I was a soldier, I know what it is to be alone and to be in pain." He does not say that for the first time in his life, he knows he is doing something worthwhile, that he is wanted and needed, and that it feels very good. Then he spoils it. He has some free time, and he doesn't know what to do with it. What's the harm in a little game of cards? It's against the hospital rules, but nobody's going to find out. And night sessions begin in Camilo's room. Attendants start sneaking off duty to huddle in corners and shoot the dice. After that, it's the old story. Camilo gets into fights, he disobeys orders, he neglects his duty, he is warned, he pays no attention, and they at last throw him out. Well, so much for trying to work and lead an honest life. His legs healed enough for marching, and it's back to the army again. But somehow the life of the camps doesn't bring the old thrill. He is sick of it and disgusted with himself. He stays with it because it is all this man knows. And then one day he puts an end to that, too. He gets into a dice game where he loses all his pay, as usual, and to try and win the pay back, he puts up his gun, then his sword, and finally his coat. He loses them all, and he is not a soldier anymore. He is down to one torn shirt, one pair of ragged trousers, and the last reminder of his military life, a soldier's belt. He is a tramp. Along the road, he falls in with another ex-trooper named Tiberio. This Tiberio is loud and bold, as Camilo's father had been. He acts as if he knows where he's going, so Camilo follows blindly after him. It doesn't seem possible that the two of them can sink lower, but they do. In a little town called Manfredonia, Camilo loses the last thing he values, which is his pride, for he stands at a church door and he begs. He doesn't even make a good beggar. People take one look at this big, hulking fellow and put him down as a bum too lazy to work. One man finally stops. The man studies Camilo.
I have a job for you. My name is Antonio de Nicastro. I'm building a monastery for the Franciscans just outside of town. I need all the help I can get. Now, if you want the job, come to my house this afternoon, and I'll give you a note to the foreman.
But as we might guess by now, Camilo doesn't come for that note. Oh, he means to, all right, until he goes to say goodbye to Tiberio. Tiberio laughs at his face. You work! A crazy soldier you've turned out to be. Come on, let's get out of the town. That night, Camilo and Tiberio bed down in a barn 12 miles outside Manfredonia. But there is no sleep for Camilo. Two voices keep sounding in his heart.
Turn back, Camilo. Turn back. There's honest work for you in Manfredonia. There's the good, clean life. Gambling's in your blood. You'll never get away from it. You've tried, you've failed. What's the use? And you couldn't stand being shut up in a monastery. Oh, you're young yet. The whole world's ahead of you. The fine, free life. It's God who's offering you this chance, Camilo. You don't deserve it, but he's being good to you. Are you going to turn your back on his mercy? What will become of your soul?
When Tiberio wakes up in the morning, he is alone. He knows where Camilo has gone. He shrugs. All right, be a fool. But for Camilo de Lelis, this morning is the dawn of a new world. For the first time in his life, he has had the courage to make up his own mind. The rest is history. It would be unbelievable if it weren't true. Camilo works for a year at the monastery. He is so faithful that the friars accept him into the order. But the ulcer on his right leg breaks out again. He has to go back to the hospital at San Giacomo. At first, they don't want to take him in, as they remember him entirely too well. They finally give him a chance, and what happens after that is incredible. This wastrel, this tramp, this weakling, whose whole life was undermined by sin, has become the most devoted, the most expert attendant at the hospital. In a few short years, he's chosen director of the entire institution. He turns the inferno into a house of peace. He finds that souls need healing more than bodies. So, in his late 30s, hardly able to read or write, he goes back to a classroom with little boys and forces his slow brain to master Latin, Greek, philosophy, theology, and is finally ordained a priest. Back at the hospital, the other priests rally to him. He trains them, organizes them into a religious order of hospital clergy. They spread out everywhere, rescuing thousands upon thousands from epidemic, fire, flood, and starvation. War strikes, and they rush to the... On their cloaks, they wear a red cross, the sign of Christ's sacrifice. For the first time in history, the Red Cross shines as a light of mercy through the smoke of battle. And long before Camilo de Lelis dies, everyone knows that he is more than a hero of charity, more than a savior of countless thousands, that he is a saint. What changed this shiftless, hollow beast man into a saint? What lifted him up from the gutter to heaven? The grace of God, the love of God. How can anyone despair How can the lowest give up hope in God's mercy when there is a communal delays? This episode of The Hour of St. Francis, entitled God and the Gambler, featured John Nesbitt as narrator. It was written for radio by D.J. Talley. The cast included Patrick McGeehan with music by Bob Mitchell. God and the Gambler was produced and directed by Father Hugh Noonan and has been brought to you by the Third Order of St. Francis, whose members with St. Francis pray, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me so love.
Hi, Golly. It's Mark. Don't mind your manners.
Yes, boys and girls, it's time to mind your manners with Alan Ludden and his panel of typical teenagers. From the studios of WTIC in Hartford, Connecticut, the National Broadcasting Company presents a teenage discussion session designed for all boys and girls from 8 to 18. Grown-ups are invited to sit in on the meeting, too. So gather round because here he comes, the man who's in charge, that man who makes manners fun, Alan Ludden.
Thank you, Ed Anderson. Hello there, boys and girls. Yes, it's just like Ed said. It's time to get together and talk about the problems of the teenagers, and we're very glad to have you with us again. We've got another adult discussion session scheduled, and we hope all of you grown-ups will stick around and join in the discussion. Right now, though, let's get things started with an introduction of our panel of typical teenagers, and here they are to talk about teenage problems.
Betty Ann Kelly, 17 years old, high school senior.
Pete Wagner, 17 years old, high school senior.
Vanda Thompson, 17 years old, high school senior.
E.J. Kilday, 17 years old, high school senior.
Margot Wagner, 13 years old, high school freshman.
And today, those boys and girls who are younger than teenage are represented on our panel by our old friend
David Benton, 12 years old, 6th grade.
Well, it's good to have you all here again, panel, and I hope you're ready to tackle some real problems that your friends from all over the country have sent in to you. This week, we send our first $5 in savings stamps to a young lady 17 years old who lives in Lyons, Georgia. She sent in this teenage problem for your consideration, panel.
Should I accept a very expensive watch from a boy that I've dated only a few times? He says he loves me, but I think of him only as a friend. If you don't think I should take the watch, please tell me how to refuse it in a nice way.
Well, it's about time for lots of girls to be getting gifts around here now. Let's hear what we're going to say to this young lady in Lyons, Georgia. What do you think about it, Betty Ann Kelly?
Well, she definitely should not accept the watch, and the only way to be nice about refusing is to be honest with him and tell him that, well, you don't feel that you're old enough to be really serious with him, and any expensive gift like a watch makes you feel obligated to him, and it's such a binding gift that you just can't accept it.
Vanda, what do you think?
Well, the boy is in the wrong in the first place. He shouldn't give jewelry. Jewelry should be only given after you're engaged.
Fine, and particularly expensive gifts of any sort are not particularly right for a girl 17. What do you think about it, Pete Wagner? What about this boy who wants to give a girl an expensive watch?
Well, I think if her boyfriend is listening in, I'd like to say a word to him that maybe in the first place he's taking too much for granted and thinking that she loves him as much as he loves her. And in the second place, a lot of girls feel insulted and obligated if they receive expensive gifts, especially before the engagement.
E.J., what's your word to this?
Well,
girl?
I agree with Pete. There is too much obligation when you give expensive jewelry like this. Boys shouldn't offer jewelry at all, or even any expensive item in that line.
That is before they're engaged.
That's right.
I think that's a pretty good rule that a lot of our teenagers can just put down in their books and say that's the law. What kind of a gift would be suitable, Margot? What kind of gift would a girl like? Do you think a girl would like to get instead of an expensive watch?
Well, a box of candy or maybe a flower or something like that. But
Flowers,
nothing expensive.
Books. Fine. Flowers, books, candy, anything impersonal like that would be a fine gift. But we don't recommend on Mind Your Manners that you give expensive jewelry, and we certainly recommend to the young lady in Lyons, Georgia, that she say thank you, but no thank you, I can't accept it. Now let's move along to the second question that was submitted to you panel. It was sent in by a young lady. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was sent in by Robert Burnside in Flint, Michigan. And, of course, Bob will receive $5 in savings stamps for sending it to you. Here is Robert Burnside's question.
I would like to know how much a boy at 13 should be given for an allowance, and how do you think he should earn it?
All right, let's hear from our 12-year-old expert, David Benton.
Well, Mr. Ludden, I've been thinking of this but if he has a lot of children in the family besides himself, I think that the allowance should be worked for and not very large. For instance, in our family, we have 4 children. Now, if my mother was
to go around paying large sums of money to 4 children, we wouldn't be rich very long.
In other words, you mean it would cost too much, and a boy with a large family should not expect too much money. But now, David, what do you think about this 13-year-old boy who feels that he should earn his allowance? Don't you think that's a good idea?
I think he's very wise in thinking that he should earn it instead of expect it.
Well, how much, though, do you think he should get if he earned it? A 13-year-old boy who wants an allowance. We do recommend allowances, don't we?
Yes.
Fine. How much, what figure would you set?
Well, provided he has a large family, somewhere around 50 cents a week.
All right. Now let's hear from Margot Wagner, who is 13 years old. Margot, what do you have to say to this young boy and also to young girls 13 on this matter of allowances?
Well, I think it all depends on what they do to earn it. A good amount is 50 cents to $1 a week if they work hard to earn it.
Fine, and they can spend it then for just their pleasures.
Yes.
Well, Margot, you're 13. Do you have an allowance?
Yes, I get $6 every 2 weeks, and with that I buy my own clothes and entertain myself.
In other words, you have the problem of budgeting your own money that way by getting an allowance.
Yes.
And do you have any responsibilities that you have to discharge in order to get that $6 every 2 weeks?
Well, I have to make my bed, take care of my room, and set the table.
Well, panel, what do you think about it? Don't you think that's a pretty good idea? To speak to all the boys and girls all over the country that we recommend on Mind Your Manners that allowances are a good thing, but they should learn that for once and for all that they should be responsible by getting an allowance and that working for it is important and that in any case the amount should not be too much. Well, I hope that we've helped Robert Burnside in Flint, Michigan. I hope his allowance has worked out comfortably with his family, and we'd like to hear from him again. All right, you know, we're always glad to hear from our listeners, and it's a particular pleasure to learn that our weekly meetings are proving beneficial to some of our audience. This week we had a very interesting letter, and I couldn't refrain from bringing it along to the meeting today because I'd like to read part of it to you. You'll see why I'm so proud of this letter when you hear what it says. It goes like this. We are a small group of mothers, 10 in number, who meet weekly to sew and discuss parental problems. This is where Mind Your Manners comes in. We've listened attentively since the program began, and you may be interested in knowing that it has become a byword in our homes, our social activities, and the children talk about it in and out of school. Mind Your Manners is a very fitting title for your program, and there is no way to guess just how much it has helped parents and children alike. We would like to hear, though, the panel discuss friction in the home. Should parents disagree with children present? Should children ever be encouraged to take sides in an argument between the parents? Well, there's more to this fine letter, but I guess we'd better get on with the discussion. Before we do, though, I would like to tell this wonderful Motherhood Circle just how much we appreciate their letter, and we certainly do hope they continue to write to us. Now, panel, let's hear what you have to say in regard to this very serious problem of friction in the home. Vanda Thompson, what do you think?
Well, I don't think parents should ever disagree in front of their children. In fact, I don't think they should disagree because that gives the children a sense of insecurity. And if you have insecurity, then, well, when you grow up, you just won't be a right parent for your children.
Fine. What do you think about it, David Benton?
I think the first thing is to have security in the home so that the child can feel like he's got 2 good parents to fall back on.
And they should agree. You think the parents should agree, and in no time should the child ever think they don't agree. But what if they do disagree, Pete? What about parents who don't agree on something? Should they argue about it in front of their children?
No, they shouldn't argue in front of the children. And also, this seems to bring in the kind of parents, when you ask them to, like if you go up to your mother and ask her something, if you can go out, she'll say, go see your father. And your father will say, go see your mother. Well, I'd like to say a word to these parents. It's wrong to pass the buck like that. If you can't make a decision yourself, then it's perfectly all right to say, well, I'll tell you later after I talk it over with your father or with your mother, but don't just go passing a buck back and forth and give the children a feeling of chaos.
Children are supposed to think that their parents are, well, sort of one person, and they always have the same opinion upon everything. And when parents try to make children choose sides in an argument that they have between them, well, it's just cruel because a child can't choose between 2 parents that he loves when he loves both of them very much.
EJ, what do you have to say?
Well, not only that, when the 2 parents argue, it leaves the children uncertain. And not only that, it shatters his ideals of what the family really means.
Margot, what do you think about this problem of parents disagreeing? Do you think that you have anything new to add to what the panel has already said?
No, I can just agree with the rest of the panel.
That the parents by all means should agree, and that by no means should there ever be any argument. Well, I hope our parents have been listening, and I hope that they've taken some advice from you, panel. That winds up our adult discussion period for today's meeting, but before we leave this department, may I once again invite all of the adults who are listening to write us their suggestions for subjects to be considered in this part of our meeting. We depend on you adults to give us our topics. Now, we don't have any prizes for you adults, but for the boys and girls from 8 to 18, we do have prizes, and here is Ed Anderson to tell you all about them.
Yes, boys and girls, if you have a question about social behavior at home, at school, or at parties, send it in to Mind Your Manners, and you may win one of the fine prizes. Each week, we award a $25 security bond to the writer of the best stated and most interesting question. And for the 5 other questions selected for discussion, Mind Your Manners awards $5 in savings stamps. All entries become the property of this program. In case of ties, duplicate prizes will be awarded. The decision of our judges is final. Contest closes at midnight on Wednesday of each week. Entries received after that date will be considered for the following week's contest. So, boys and girls, remember, Mind Your Manners is your show, and we want your problems. Send all entries to this address. Mind Your Manners, Department 4, National Broadcasting Company, Radio City, New York 20, New York. Send your questions in today.
Now let's see who won $5 in savings stamps for sending us our third teenage problem to be submitted to our panel. It comes from a 12-year-old girl in White Plains, Maryland. And this is what she asks.
I am the smartest one in my class, and the other children seem to be jealous of me. They make up stories and get me in trouble with the teacher. What can I do to make them like me and not pick on me?
Well, now, panel, what can this girl in White Plains, Maryland, who is the smartest girl in her class, do? Let's hear first from Pete Wagner. How about it, Pete? What kind of grades do you make? Are you the smartest one in your class?
Well, my grades are fairly good, you could say.
I think, as a matter of fact, we better tell our audience that Pete is valedictorian of this class, and so he can talk to this young girl, because, well, you make pretty good grades, too, then, evidently. Pete, now let's hear what... Pete's blushing. I've got to tell you that, too. I wish we had television so they can see him. All right, let's hear what you have to say to this young lady.
Well, I'd say to her, just forget about your good marks. Go outside of class, be one of the gang, and associate with the other people. Don't let your marks go to your head and be conceited about it. Good grades are important, but outside of class, you should be humble and one of the gang.
Betty Ann Kelly?
No, I'd say humble yourself, and you should be exalted, and exalt yourself, and you should be humble. That comes from the Bible.
Fine. You think it's a good slogan for a young girl who thinks she's the smartest one in her class?
It is, and about the girls thinking that, well, she's better, it may be just her attitude that gives her the idea that they're jealous. She may, well, be so apart from them and make herself so special that they just sort of ignore her, and that gives her the opinion that they don't like her.
Vanda?
I don't think schools should say which student is the smartest one in the class. And high schools shouldn't announce which children or students are number 1, number 2, number 3 publicly. They should talk with them, in a private conference.
Well, fine. We're getting around to a new angle of this. This girl, if the grades had not been given publicly, she wouldn't necessarily know that she was the number 1 in her class. Although if she did know it, she shouldn't take it to heart too much. But you recommend, Vanda, that that ratings in classes, as I understand it, is that what you mean, should not be posted publicly. David Benton, what do you have to say to this girl?
Well, I've been thinking that probably she may think she gets the best grades, but those people that work very hard and even get lower marks, provided they work, they're just about as on the same rank as she is.
Fine. In other words, a student who works very hard is going to be learning, perhaps, just as much as a person who gets A's or top grades without perhaps so much work. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, David, because it's a good plug for all the boys and girls who are plugging a hard way there and studying hard and learning everything they can and making perhaps C's and B's. This girl who is making all A's, for instance, should not then think that she's the smartest in her class, and we hope she gets along better with her classmates after this. And now, you know what it is? It's time to hear from our studio audience. So how about it, audience? Are you ready for your audience quiz? Fine. Now, here are the rules of your contest. They're very simple. Eddie Robbins will make a statement about some fine point of manners. That statement can be right or wrong, and it's up to you to decide which one it is. Now, you hold up your hand, and Ed Anderson will pick one of you to speak up for the audience. If you tell us correctly whether Eddie's statement is right or wrong, the audience gets 20 points. Now, last week our audience score was 80, so let's see how well you can do today. Here's Eddie Robbins with our first right or wrong statement.
It spoils the pleasure of getting flowers for a girl if her date calls up to check on the color of corsage she would prefer.
All right, now, what about it? Girls getting corsages. Let's hear from this young lady, right?
No, I don't think it does.
That statement is wrong, and you're right. That's 20 points. What's your name?
Judith Blumenthal.
And when you get a corsage, you'd like to have the boy call up to check on the color of your dress, wouldn't you?
Yes.
And so we recommend that by all means, before giving a corsage, you check on the color. Thank you very much, Judith. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you very much. 20 points, audience. Second statement.
A gentleman will always assist a lady when she is putting on or taking off her coat.
A gentleman assists a lady with a coat. Let's hear from this gentleman right here.
Yes.
That's right. That's 20 points. What's your name?
Lee Kennedy.
What?
Lee Kennedy.
Lee, you will always help a young lady with her coat when she's putting it on or taking it off, don't you?
Yes.
Ah, fine. All right, here's a little gift for you, and that's 40 points for the audience.
If you really want to impress people with your table manners, you should take very dainty bites, hold your silverware with 2 fingers, and act like you are not very hungry.
All right, what about that kind of table manners? Are those good manners? What do you think about it, young lady?
I think that you don't have to do that.
You're so right. That's a wrong statement. That's 60 points for the audience. What's your name?
Jean Bellevue.
Fine, Jean. We recommend that table manners be very proper, but they don't have to be fancy or fussy. All right, 60 points, audience, and here's a little gift for you.
When taking a date to dinner in a restaurant, a gentleman always allows the lady to give her own order to the waiter.
A gentleman always allows the lady to give her own order to the waiter. What do you think about it, young man?
No, I don't.
No, the gentleman gives the order to the waiter. By golly, they've got 80 points. What's your name?
Alex Pavlon.
Fine. I want to thank you very much. Here's a little gift for you. It's perfectly true that the gentleman always takes the order from the lady and the gentleman always gives it to the waiter. Here's your last one. If you get this right, you get 100 points.
Clean fingernails are a must if you want to be well-groomed. And a well-mannered teenager is a well-groomed teenager.
Oh, look at the hands that are up. I wonder who we're going to pick. Here's a young man.
Yes, I think it is.
That's 100 points. That's certainly true. Clean fingernails are a must if you want to be well-groomed. And if you're well-groomed, you're going to perhaps be well-mannered, but certainly a well-mannered boy is always well-groomed. What's your name?
Fred Yeager.
Fred, thank you very much. Are your fingernails clean? Yes, they are. They're fine. Thank you a lot, Fred. Here's a little gift for you. And audience, you made 100 points, so I think, panel, you ought to give the audience a hand. Audience, give yourself a hand. Fine. Thank you very much. I hope you'll all come back to see us next week. Hope you had a good time this week, and congratulations on your score. Right now, though, it's time to turn back to the panel, and we're anxious to hear what they have to say in answer to the question that was submitted by a young lady who lives way down in Galveston, Texas. This is her problem. Pardon me, Vanna.
I'm 14 and a half years old and a sophomore in high school. Many of the boys my age use their parents' cars for dates. My girlfriends all go out with them in the cars, but my mother will not allow me to go out on a date in a car if there is no adult present. I don't know what to say when a boy asks me for a date in a car. Should I tell him to get another means of transportation? Or should I just say not to go, or should I just not go out with him?
Fine. Now, here's a 14-and-a-half-year-old girl who has a problem about going out with a car. Betty Ann Kelly, what? Out in a car with a boy, that is. All right, let's hear from you, Betty Ann Kelly.
Well, I think the girl ought to be congratulated in the first place because she seems to accept her mother's decision and thinks she's right. And about going out with a boy, I think if he really wants to go out with you, it won't matter that you aren't able to go in the car. And we'll just tell him that. We'll tell him the truth, that Mother is very willing that you go out with him and you'd love to go yourself, but there's just a little rule in your family that you aren't allowed to go out in a car alone with a boy unless there's an older person along. And that if it's all right with him, you'd be very glad to go on a bus or perhaps get an older person to go along with you.
Fine. Pete Wagner, what would you do if a very attractive young lady said that to you? Would you still want to go out with her?
I certainly would. If I thought enough of her to ask her to go out, then I wouldn't mind either walking or having one of our parents drive us to the dance. But one thing, I'd feel badly if the girl just said no because she couldn't go out in my car with me.
Fine. By all means, then, you're saying to this girl in Galveston, Texas, to go out with the boys and be very frank and honest about the stipulation of your parents. Betty Ann, I think it's fine that you complimented this young lady in Galveston for so being willing to obey her mother in the matter. And I think, panel, that we're going to leave the problem right there. Do you all agree that she should go out, panel?
Yes.
Yes. You do agree that she should say very honestly to her date that she'd love to go if he would agree to the stipulations set by the girl's parents. Fine. Now let's go on to our fifth problem, rather. But before we do, I'd like to pause a moment and invite all of you boys and girls who are listening right now to drop us a line. If you have any sort of problem about social behavior that you would like to hear the panel discuss, send it along to Mind Your Manners. Pete's going to give you our address again at the close of the meeting. And remember, if your question is selected for discussion, you'll receive one of our fine prizes, just like Tommy Diefenbacher from Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Tommy wins $5 in savings stamps for sending us this problem for consideration by our panel.
I am 10 years old and I am in a cub troop. I would like to go camping overnight with another boy in my troop. Mother says I need someone older to go with me. What do you think?
All right, here's the problem of a 10-year-old boy. Let's hear first from David Benton.
Well, be obedient. That's where I think that's one of the laws of the Cub Troop and of the regular Scouts. Of course, the boy may think, oh, I'm good enough to go out now. I can go out by myself, in fact. But I think he should have the supervision of the den master or somebody older.
Fine. In other words, it doesn't have to be an adult, but it can be an older boy. What do you think about it, Pete Wagner? You're a scout, aren't you?
Well, I used to be.
Well, what do you think about a Cub Scout 10 years old who wants to go camping overnight with just another boy his own age from his Cub troop?
Well, I think that's wrong. As David said, one of the Scout laws is Scout is obedient, so if you want to live up to those, you shouldn't. But I think camping is one of the best things for a boy of that age. But as I remember, when I was in the Cub Scouts, there's a Boy Scout for each den, and a den leader or something like that. And why don't you ask your den leader to go out with you camping, or your den leader and assistant den leader, and if you have 2 scouts and go with your friend, 2 scouts and 2 cubs, you can go out and have a swell time camping.
Fine. We do recommend then to this boy, to Tommy, that he go on out camping, but he has an older boy with him. All right, what do you think about it, DJ? Do you agree with Pete?
I certainly do. Boy, they certainly cleaned up this question.
They took all the points of this question. You just agree, huh?
I plead guilty, though, to not being a scout, although I agree. I think that it's all right to go camping at 10, as long as they have someone older than them when they go. I don't think they're experienced enough to go out at 10 years old out in the woods by themselves.
Fine. All right, Vanda, what do you think about it?
Well, the boys have excluded girls, and I'd like to put the girls in the same category.
Do you think girls should go camping?
Certainly.
Fine. Girl Scout. You a Girl Scout?
I was a Girl Scout.
Fine. Well, then what about 10-year-old girls going camping alone?
No, not alone, especially girls. I mean, I think they should have their scout leader with them, or another Girl Scout or a senior member of the troop.
Fine. All right, then I hope Tommy has a good time camping, but by all means he should not go out alone with another cub member. He should go out with an older person. And now we come to the high point of our meeting, the grand prize question of the week. The judges decided that the best stated and most interesting letter was sent to Mind Your Manners this week by a fine young man who lives in a small town in Tennessee. Our congratulations to this young man. We're going to send him a $25 security bond, and the panel is all set to talk about his problem. Panel, your very best attention is invited now to the grand prize question of the week.
I was in an accident a few years ago, and it left me with a limp. Recently, with the help of my mother, I have been learning how to dance, and I believe I have enough self-confidence to try to get a date for the next dance. Do you think I'm foolish to think of going to dances like other boys and girls? Will the girls feel funny dancing with me? Or should I content myself with the pleasures that are not affected by my limp?
All right, here's a boy with a real problem and a fine attitude, I think. Let's hear first from the boys. Let's hear from E.J. Kilday.
Well, I admire this fellow for feeling this way. I'd say to him, go to that dance. The girls don't go to the dance with the best-looking and the smartest fellow, but with the fellow that has personality and one that can give the girls a good time.
All right, and Betty Ann, what about dancing with this boy with his limp, a slight limp, perhaps?
Dancing is...
Pardon me, go ahead.
Dancing is not a pleasure that's affected by the limp, and you say you've learned, and, well, you seem to be pretty good and you have self-confidence, so just go ahead. It's your personality that counts, and who cares about anything else?
All right, now, fine. Well, now, let's talk more about this question of dancing. I don't see why the limp should interfere. Do you, Pete?
No, I think in dancing, rhythm and self-confidence are the 2 most important things, and if you have those 2 things, forget about your limp. And if you do go to the dance, which we suggest, and there's any girl there that would feel offended or feel funny or refuse to dance with you, then just feel that she's not the best kind of girl, and don't feel too bad if those kind of girls refuse you.
Fine, just forget about her.
Right.
Fine. All right, what about it, Vanda? Do you agree that rhythm and self-confidence are important in this matter of being a good dancer?
Oh, yes, I want to praise this fella for his self-confidence, because I think a lot of people who have had some similar handicap, well, they lack self-confidence, and they're afraid to go out and face the world. They think that they just belong in a secluded corner for people. And, well, I still want to praise him for his self-confidence and wanting to go and dance.
Well, fine. We do think that he's right in wanting to go out, and there's no reason at all why he shouldn't have a good time and why the girl shouldn't have a good time dancing with him. Margot, do you dance?
Well, a little.
A little? Well, I'm sure that when you start dancing, Margot, let me ask Betty Ann Kelly. I think she's quite a dancer. Betty Ann, do you think that rhythm is the most important thing about dancing with a boy? A boy who has good rhythm and has self-confidence about it, is he a good dancer usually?
He's a perfect dancer.
Fine. Well, and I think we should recommend to this boy and to all boys and girls who feel a little insecure that they should go out and have a good time with self-confidence. Incidentally, panel, don't you agree that perhaps there are boys and girls who don't limp or who have no handicap at all who still feel insecure in going to dances? And it's, what do you have to say to them, Pete? What do you think about these boys who wonder about their first date to a dance?
Well, I can't blame them. I remember my first date. I was a little insecure and not too self-confident, but don't let it stop you. If something goes wrong on the first date, don't think it's going to go wrong on every date.
Fine. Just in other words, keep going and have a good time and keep your self-confidence up. All right, fine. Now let's open up our answer box. We're going to find here the answers to those questions that have been sent in, but they were not selected for discussion with our panel. Today, the first question to come from our answer box is
from a girl in Detroit, Michigan. I have invited a boy to 2 of the dances given by my dancing class. He happened to have dates for both of them, and so he couldn't go with me. Now we're having another dance, and I'd like to invite him again. Should I? Or do you think he'll think I'm chasing him?
Well, if he has not asked you out since you last invited him to your dance, we suggest that it might be better if you did not invite him again until he has returned the compliment or indicated his interest in you in some other way.
From a girl in Sarasota, Florida. Is it proper for parents to open a daughter's mail and read it before she gets home?
No. It is very bad manners for anybody to read anybody else's mail.
From a girl in Clymer, New York. I'm giving a birthday party, and I'm inviting all of my Sunday school class. I'd like to ask one girl in another class, but I can't invite all of the rest in her group. Is it all right just to ask her alone?
Yes, it certainly is. If you want her to come to your party, it's your privilege to ask her.
From a girl in Brady, Nebraska. Should a girl go out with a boy from out of town after she has refused a date with a boy in town?
Well, generally the answer to that question is no. It's not very courteous to accept a date after you have refused one, but it does depend on the circumstances. Just remember that you might hurt somebody's feelings, and that is never good manners.
From a girl in Detroit, Michigan. Is it all right to read the comic books in the drugstore if you're not planning to buy one?
Well, it's not very considerate of the owner of the store. After all, you may damage one of the books that he could sell to somebody else. So we recommend that boys and girls do not read the magazines in the store if they're not going to buy one.
From a girl in Miami, Florida. My mother wants me to take piano lessons, but I want to take typing. Which should come first?
Well, we think that piano lessons are very important, and you know we can't see any reason why you can't learn to type. At the same time, you're learning to play the piano, and there it goes. The top just went back on our answer box. It looks like it's about time to adjourn this week's meeting. But before we do, let's hear from our Mind Your Manners panel one more time.
This is Betty Ann Kelly inviting you all to send us your questions or problems. Write today, won't you?
This is E.J. Kilday. Just in case you're wondering, I want you to know that we read all of your letters, and we really like to see them come in.
This is Margaret Wagner, reminding you to be sure and put your full name and address on your letters or cards.
This is David Benton, speaking to the boys and girls younger than teenage, and urging them to send us their questions, too.
This is Vanna Thompson with a special word to the boys and girls who have joined us for the first time today. Won't you drop us a note so we can get better acquainted?
And this is Pete Wagner with our address. Better write it down so you won't forget it. Here it is. Mind Your Manners, Department 4, National Broadcasting Company, Radio City, New York 20, New York.
Well, panel, it was a good meeting, and we're all looking forward to our next one. Before we leave, I'd like to invite again the adults to send us their suggestions for our adult discussion subject. Remember, I'll be calling Mind Your Manners to order about this same time next week, and I hope you're all going to plan to join us and bring your friends. Have a wonderful week. In the meantime, drop us a line, won't you? And this is Alan Ludden saying goodbye now.
Yes, boys and girls, this is your show. So if you have a problem about social behavior, either at home, at school, or at parties, send it in to Mind Your Manners. You may win one of those 6 prizes. Remember, the best question receives a $25 savings bond. Mind Your Manners is written and conducted by that man who makes manners fun, Alan Ludden. He'll be back with this panel of typical teenagers next week at the same time. This is Ed Anderson saying we hope to see you then, and in the meantime, remember...
By golly, it is smart to mind your manners.
Mind Your Manners has come to you from the studios of WTIC in Hartford, Connecticut. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel that they bring unto thee pure oil olive, beaten for the light, to cause the lamp to burn continually in the tabernacle of the congregation. And it shall be a statute forever in your generations. The eternal life. The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations present The Eternal Life, a program which comes to you under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Our drama today by Morton Wishengrad is entitled Pugnacious Commodore and is based upon an original monograph by Dr. Abram Kanoff. Featured as Uriah P. Levy is Leon Janney. Roger de Koven is the narrator.
off, it spoiled his constitution. Way haul away, we'll haul away June. Way haul away, we'll haul away
In the days of our youth, when the Republic was new. Oh, yes, in those days, Philadelphia Harbor was something for a boy to see. The smell of the cargoes, the rising of the masts, the full-rigged ships rolling on the tide, waiting for a favoring slant of breeze. Cutters, yawls, staysail schooners, brigantines, mighty three-masters, ships for a boy to see and hunger after. Especially for a 10-year-old boy in the year 1802. Philadelphia Harbor, the year 1802, and a boy.
Are you Captain Moffat?
I am?
I'm told you need a cabin boy for the voyage.
Oh. What manner of cabin boy would I be in need of?
Me.
Well, what does me know about a vessel?
I know the rigging of a vessel.
You know fore from main and main from mizzen?
Yes.
Well, what's the rig of this ship?
Cutter rig, sir. Gaff mainsail and topsail.
Good. Very good. You running away, boy?
Yes.
They beat you?
No, sir.
Well, why are you running away?
I wish to follow the sea. My father will not hear of it.
What manner of man is your father?
He's a merchant. For him, the sea is only a highway for commerce.
Oh. Well, what does it mean to you?
Do you require a cabin boy, sir?
What's your name, son?
Uriah Levy, sir.
You go on board, Mr. Levy. You are hired for the boy.
A 10-year-old boy went out on a voyage. An 11-year-old boy came home.
Oh, Father, I've come home.
They faced each other in a Philadelphia house. Uriah Levy, the son, Michael Levy, the father.
It's you.
Yes, sir.
And did you come in through the window?
No, sir, I entered through the door.
You left through the window like a common sneak.
Only because you forced me to.
You are still insolent.
Yes, sir.
Come here. I wish to touch your cheek. Come closer.
Yes, sir.
Your cheeks are hard. Only yesterday your cheeks were round and soft with baby fat. And now you are becoming a man.
You will learn to forgive me for it.
The sea has not improved your manners.
I've learned, Father.
From your drunken companions, no doubt?
I understand the splicing of a rope.
An accomplishment.
I've learned to scull a jolly boat.
Indeed.
I've studied the heaving to of a ship in a gale of wind.
The epitome of culture.
Father, why do you bother to speak with me?
You do not cringe. I like that. You will allow not even your father to bully you. Uriah, I am not displeased with you.
I am glad to be home, Father.
Are you?
Yes, sir.
But you are planning to leave again. I can see it in your face. You do not lie. That's good.
Yes, sir.
Uriah, do you know mathematics?
No, sir.
You will learn mathematics. You will learn to box a compass and take the magnetic altitude of the sun. If you mean to be a seaman, then at least you will be an intelligent seaman.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He returned to the sea. He learned. He stood his apprenticeship on a slanting deck, his legs braced for the heaves of the tides, and his eyes were a seaman's eyes and saw direct to the horizon. When he was in his middle teens, he was a bosun. When he was 18, he was a second mate on the brig Polly and Betsy. When he was 19, he shipped out on the brig Five Sisters, first mate. And on his 20th birthday, he stood on the bridge of the schooner George Washington.
Helm up 1 point! Helm up a point! Aye, aye, Captain.
Captain Uriah Levy. A sound sweet to the ears of a man of 20. Captain. And a captain not like other captains.
You sent for me, Captain?
I did, Mr. Jessup. This morning you flogged a man.
The mate keeps discipline, sir.
This morning, Mr. Jessup, you flogged a man.
He was insubordinate.
I said no flogging aboard this ship.
He refused to obey my orders.
Mr. Jessup, my orders were no flogging. You were insubordinate.
I manned the brace when you was being wet nursed. I'm twice your age, sir.
While you're mate aboard this ship, Mr. Jessup, you'll obey my orders.
You can't have discipline without a cat o' nine tails.
How do you know, Mr. Jessup?
Everyone knows. Flogging's the custom.
Not on this ship, Mr. Jessup. I'll have no brutality on this ship. I mean what I say, Mr. Jessup.
Yes, sir. Very good, sir.
In the year 1812, the war with England was announced. Captain Uriah Levy applied for admission into the United States Navy.
Mr. Levy, you are not a graduate of Annapolis.
No, sir.
The best we can do for you, then, is this warrant by President Madison as a sailing master.
Thank you, sir.
In the Navy of 1812, the executive officers knew little of seamanship. Their job was to fight. Navigation was entrusted to the sailing master. On the USS Argus, navigation was entrusted to sailing master Uriah Phillips Levy.
Sail! Sail off the starboard bow!
What do you make of it, Levy?
She's longer sparred and better bottomed than the French vessels in these waters.
Then, you think she's English?
Yes, sir, I do.
Levy, can you overtake that ship?
Captain, we're running close hauled and every stitch drawing.
I want that ship.
I think you can have her, Captain. She sails like a stack of hay. Bosun! Aye, sir. Order all hands to wet down the sails. Aye, sir. Wet down the sails. All hands wet down the sails. Wet them down. Helmsman, closer to the wind. Hauler to the wind.
In 6 short weeks, the USS Argus ran a gauntlet of British men of the line into the English Channel and up through the Irish Sea. She scourged British shipping and closed the Channel ports. At Lloyd's, the insurance rate doubled, then it tripled, then it soared out of sight. And 19 times, Captain Allen of the Argus announced,
Mr. Levy, you will take a boarding party aboard the prize ship.
But for 6 weeks, the crew of the Argus bore a charmed life. On August 10th, 1813, the Argus overtook and captured her 20th vessel, His Majesty's ship Betty.
Lieutenant? I said lieutenant.
The lieutenant is below, Captain.
You are mistaken, Mr. Levy. The lieutenant is here. It is my pleasure to name you temporary lieutenant in the Navy of the United States.
Captain, I'm very proud.
You have a right to be, sir. You have earned your commission. Lieutenant, you will now take a prize party aboard the HMS Betty, repair her damage as best you can, and take her into the nearest neutral port as a prize of war.
Very good, sir.
And, Lieutenant, it's been a pleasure to have you aboard.
The boarding party never brought the prize ship to a neutral port. On August 13th, 1813, HMS Betty was recaptured by the British Navy, and Uriah Levy and the group of American seamen with him
were cast into Dartmoor prison for 16 months. For 16 months until December 1814, Uriah Levy was a prisoner of war at Dartmoor. American seamen were flogged for minor infractions of the prison rules. And Uriah Levy said,
"Even in prison, civilized men must reject the use of the lash. And if we reject it here because it's cruel, what place can it have aboard a free American ship?"
He became a man with an obsession. On his return to the United States,
Uriah Phillips Levy, for extraordinary merit and for extraordinary service, I commission you a permanent lieutenant in the Navy of the United States of America.
Lieutenant Uriah Levy boarded the frigate United States in the Mediterranean. He was a marked man.
You wish to see me, Lieutenant?
I do, sir. I understand that my presence on this vessel has not been welcomed.
Well, I welcome you, Lieutenant.
I thank you for it, sir. I had reference to the midshipmen in the wardroom. They're not cordial.
I'm sorry for that.
If you have no objection, sir, I wish to take my mess alone.
As you wish.
It's not my wish.
Mr. Levy, a word of advice to you.
I ask no advice, sir.
Well, how do you know what I'll tell you?
You will tell me to speak softly, to accept offense, and to suffer insult.
Uriah Levy, my advice to you is do your duty as an officer and a gentleman. And the first man who observes a different course toward you, hold him to strict and prompt account.
Sir, thank you.
Consider it the advice of the United States Navy. Your hand, Lieutenant.
All right, Weaver, here he comes.
Mr. Levy.
You're speaking to me, Mr. Weaver?
I was not aware that there was another Levy on board.
Quite so. You have a question for me, sir?
I do. Mr. Levy, certain utterances you have made have been considered to be ill-conceived.
How's that, sir?
Item. On the second day of the month, you were overheard to suggest that flogging had no place aboard this ship.
That's true.
Item. On the 16th day of the month, you were seen destroying property of the United States government. A cat of nine tails.
How many more items do you have, Mr. Weaver?
Quite a few, sir.
And you have noted them down?
Each one, Mr. Levy.
That would give you very little time to carry on your own duties.
Weaver, I think he's got you there. Better leave him alone.
Mr. Weaver, your intention is to insult me.
It is.
Before I challenge you, I should like the courtesy of an explanation for your attitude.
Sir, you are a bumptious sailing master who has never set foot in Annapolis. Besides, you and your kind are offensive.
Mr. Weaver, I give you this as a sailing master.
You will answer for this, Levy.
No doubt. Mr. Weaver, I don't believe in flogging. However, I'm not inhibited by that belief from answering an insult. By God, what, Mr. Weaver? By our mutual God, what will you do? I will kill you. An excellent and honorable way to serve God.
Gentlemen, what is this disturbance? Mr. Levy, I ask an explanation.
If you please, sir. I have challenged Mr. Weaver.
Go to your quarters, Mr. Levy. You may consider yourself under arrest.
He was court-martialed. Uriah Levy was tried by a board of his peers, and the decision announced.
Mr. Levy, it is the sentence of this court-martial that you be admonished. You will stand, Lieutenant.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Levy, you are hereby admonished. Now resume your duties as first lieutenant. Give him his sword.
The lieutenant's sword is nowhere to be found.
Good enough. I will give him my sword.
There were other court-martials for Uriah Levy. He was a stormy petrel and a pugnacious one, but he earned the respect and the admiration of his associates. Several years later, he stood on the bridge of the SS Vandalia as commander.
Mr. Gibson. Yes, sir. There's a record here of a flogging done yesterday before I came aboard.
The seaman in question, sir, came aboard in a state of drunkenness.
And so you had him flogged?
Yes, sir. The man's an inveterate drunkard.
Then he's been flogged before?
Yes, sir.
And in consequence, he drinks less?
No, sir. He drinks the same.
Then why is he flogged?
It's his punishment.
Ah, he's punished.
Yes, sir.
And is he to be punished today?
Another 12 lashes, sir.
Very well, Lieutenant. You yourself will administer today's flogging.
I wish to be excused, sir.
Aye, Lieutenant.
I am an officer, sir. I believe I was brought up to be a gentleman. I cannot stand over a man with a whip.
Is the boatswain less a gentleman? You require him to stand with a whip. Lieutenant, my orders are to cease corporal punishment on this vessel.
May I point out, sir, that there's no navy in the world without flogging?
And this will be the first one. And this is going to be the first ship of that first navy.
His views met with approval. Slowly, the cat o' nine tails began to disappear. And slowly, as the knowledge grew that corporal punishment was disappearing in the fleets and the shore establishments of the American Navy, slowly a newer type of recruit came into the service. Young men who knew that a career awaited them and not the bite of the lash. This was Uriah Levy's contribution to American democracy. Another contribution remained. He was named captain, but strangely relieved of his command. Still a pugnacious man, he went to the Secretary of the Navy.
All right, Levy. I admit there have been pressures. First, you came into the Navy as a sailing master.
Ah. I don't belong to the club.
Yes. Second, this flogging business.
But the Navy has gone along. Senator Hale has introduced a bill in Congress to eliminate corporal punishment.
Still, it's a cause for resentment. Finally, there is a third reason.
I'm a Jew.
You are, Levy. There are bigots to whom that makes a difference. Mr. Levy, I should think we cannot afford to let the Navy be run by the bigots. I am on your side.
Uriah Phillips Levy spoke before an appeal board. His statement is a part of American history.
This is the case before you. It is the case of every Israelite in the Union. Are all these to be proscribed while we retain in our Constitution language to be spoken to the ear, but broken to the hope? And think not, if you once enter in this career, that it can be limited to the Jew. What is my case today may tomorrow be that of the Roman Catholic or the Unitarian, the Episcopalian or the Methodist, the Presbyterian or the Baptist. There is but one safeguard, and this is to be found in the honest, wholehearted, inflexible support of the impartial guarantees of the Constitution.
The appeal board considered. A communication was sent to the Secretary of the Navy. Then, in the Mediterranean Sea, they piped a new squadron commodore, highest existing rank in the American Navy, aboard the USS Macedonian.
You may raise the flag.
On February 21st, 1860, they raised the flag over the Mediterranean fleet of Uriah P. Levy, Commodore, United States Navy.
before the revolution. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. King Louis had his head cut off, it spoiled his constitution. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe.
If you would like a free copy of the script you have just heard, write to the Eternal Light, 3080 Broadway, New York 27, New York. And now we present Mr. Stanley Garten, President of the National Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, affiliated with the United Synagogue of America, speaking from New York City.
Commodore Levy's campaign against cruelty and oppression has an underlying significance for all Americans today. Respect for the dignity of every man, regardless of his status, is fundamental to democracy and is founded in religion. We are taught in Genesis concerning the creation of man in the image of God. The Talmud developed that narrative into the doctrine that all men have spiritual worth and should be treated considerately. No man, said our sages, should be publicly humiliated. Even an offender must not be subjected to unwarranted degradation. The spirit of these teachings is reflected in our Declaration of Independence and constitutional guarantees, justifying the statement by the historian Lecky that the American Constitution is cemented with Hebraic mortar. Commodore Levy's battle for humanitarianism was therefore in accord with both the teachings of religion and of true Americanism. Despite prejudice and insult, and at the risk of his career, he vigorously and persistently demanded humane treatment, regardless of class distinctions, for men serving our country. His moral courage in this fight recalls the biblical injunction, "Justice, justice shalt thou pursue." Commodore Levy succeeded 90 years ago because Americans sympathized with the oppressed. Today, there is urgent need of such sympathy and understanding in dealing with current problems. Loyalty to the democratic ideals always cherished by Americans requires that our daily life as individuals and our conduct as citizens shall serve to make these ideals become realities. Now, when more than ever before, the world looks to this country, the amelioration of the plight of the oppressed, and the endeavor to secure justice to all are the obligation and duty of all Americans.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley Garten. Eternal Light drama today was written by Morton Wishengrad and was based upon an original monograph by Dr. Abram Kanoff. Featured as Uriah Levy was Leon Zanny, and Roger de Koven was the narrator. The music was composed by Morris Mamorsky and conducted by Milton Katims. Cantor David Putterman sang the liturgical introduction. The entire production was under the direction of Maurice Robinson. If you would like a free copy of today's script, write to The Eternal Light, 3080 Broadway, New York 27, New York. This program is a weekly presentation of the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations in cooperation with the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
In Psalm 63, David said, "My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness, and my mouth shall praise thee with joyful lips, when I remember thee upon my bed, and meditate on thee in the night watches." To help you focus your thoughts upon God at the close of this day, we bring you this devotional meditation from Morning and Evening by Charles Haddon Spurgeon, the great English preacher of the 19th century. This evening's text is found in John chapter 11 and verse 4. "This sickness is not unto death." From our Lord's words we learn that there is a limit to sickness. Here is an unto, within which its ultimate end is restrained and beyond which it cannot go. Lazarus might pass through death, but death was not to be the final end of his sickness. In all sickness, the Lord says to the waves of pain, "Hitherto shall ye go, but no further." His fixed purpose is not the destruction, but the instruction of his people. Wisdom hangs up the thermometer at the furnace mouth and regulates the heat. The limit is encouragingly comprehensive. The God of providence has limited the time, manner, intensity, repetition, and effects of all our sicknesses. Each throb is decreed, each sleepless hour predestinated, each relapse ordained, each depression of spirit foreknown, and each sanctifying result eternally purposed. Nothing great or small escapes the ordaining hand of Him who numbers the hairs of our head. This limit is wisely adjusted to our strength, to the end designed, and to the grace apportioned. Affliction comes not at haphazard. The weight of every stroke of the rod is accurately measured. He who made no mistakes in balancing the clouds and meting out the heavens commits no errors in measuring out the ingredients which compose the medicine of souls. We cannot suffer too much, nor be relieved too late. And the limit is tenderly appointed. The knife of the heavenly surgeon never cuts deeper than is absolutely necessary. He doth not afflict willingly, nor grieve the children of men. A mother's heart cries, "Spare my child," but no mother is more compassionate than our gracious God. When we consider how hard-mouthed we are, it is a wonder that we are not driven with a sharper bit. The thought is full of consolation that He who has fixed the bounds of our habitation has also fixed the bounds of our tribulation. This meditation was taken from Morning and Evening by C.H. Spurgeon. Please listen each evening at this same time for Morning and Evening.